Welcome to today's episode. We will be discussing the year 2016 and what that brought to video games. Before we do that, though, we'll go over our little Relay of Gaming segment here where I've selected 7 games that I'll be posting gameplay footage of on my YouTube channel called Arcade Amigo. And then we'll get into some modern gaming news. There's been a lot of stuff happening as usual, so usually what I do here, if you're new, is I try to get as much info on what's going on in modern gaming, and just provide like a casual conversation on it. And also, if there's a new game that I'm playing, I'll try to give some insight on that there. And then after that is when we'll get into the main meat of the podcast here for 2016 and what that brought to video games. 2016 was, I feel, a bit of a quieter year. Certainly, no year is bad. Where there's not like there's nothing good to play. But when I just look at the overall bulk of games that came out, there's definitely some standouts. But just a bit, again, one of the more quieter years out there. But there's still some pretty exciting games that we had. Return of certain franchises and all, and so definitely made some of these games worth playing. But let's go ahead and start getting into it here, though, with the Relay of Gaming. So I've got 7 games that I've selected here. And so we're starting off with an old 3D fighter, and that is for Tekken. So this is the original Tekken, Tekken 1, I guess you could say. And so this one originally came out in the arcades, I want to say in 1994, was it? I think 1994, because I know it came out on the PlayStation in 1995, and I think if it wasn't a launch title on the PlayStation 5 in the United States, it was pretty close to it. I just don't know if it came out in the arcades in the previous year, maybe 1993. But either way, though, it's a fighter from Namco. And so Namco and Sega at this time were really trying to outdo each other, right, with some of their 3D games. And so this Tekken was sort of their answer to Sega's Virtua Fighter. But kind of like that game, though, it's definitely impressive for what it was doing at the time, but it very quickly got shut out by its sequels that just improved on so much more of it. And so Tekken, when I didn't play it back then, but I can imagine it would have been pretty impressive seeing the, pretty detailed at the time, right? Anyways, textured graphics and 60 frames per second, and also the interesting fighting mechanics on this one where each button controls a limb. So, right arm, right leg, left leg, and then on how you can use those buttons to create combinations was pretty cool. But by the time Tekken 2 came out, maybe a year or two later, it already really outclassed this game, and it was just done so much better in so many ways. And so I think that's why this one just doesn't really get remembered of much as far as I can see. But like I said, right at the time when it first came out, I can imagine this would have been pretty impressive to see on the PlayStation or in the arcades. If anything, though, it did start establishing some certain Tekken highlights, right, that would become part of a staple of the series. And so, for example, like I said before, right, the way the button prompts are laid out on how you control your characters is pretty cool. It started introducing us to some characters that would continue to be fan favorites, like Kazuya or Heihachi. And then also, at least up to a certain point, excuse me, the even to an extent, the arcades, they had some CG cinemas on it. And when they came over to the home versions, they had some really cool cinematic cutscenes for like the intro and then the characters' endings. And so this game started establishing that as well. And also having some really cool music. Tekken games have already had really fantastic soundtracks, and this one was already showing that there. But other than that, though, I mean, the moves are more limited. Tekken games have always felt a little stiff to me, but this one especially. And so, again, it was sort of more like a prototype, is sort of what it feels like to me. But the series would only continue to get better from here. It's interesting, if anything, just to kind of see where this series got its start, though. But next up is Dragon Quest XI: Echoes of an Elusive Age. And so this game came out, I want to say in 2017 originally. Came out first on the PlayStation 4, and then eventually got another version where it was Echoes of Elusive Age S, which added some new quality of life features and whatnot, and then got ported over to the Switch and the Xbox. And Dragon Quest games can tend to be a little long, especially the more recent entries. And this one is no exception. It's really long. I've got a ways into it, but I still feel like I got about halfway or so is my guess. I really need to go back and beat this game, as I really enjoy it. I love how it's It feels very modern in a lot of ways, but at the same time new to. Oh, I'm sorry, like a old school RPG as well. And that's been part of the charm of the Dragon Quest games is that they retain the classic turn-based battle system. Just a very simple on how you can equip your items and all. But just has a really cool aesthetic to it with, again, with Akira Toriyama's artwork and all. It's just always a joy to look at. And the soundtrack is as symphonic and bombastic as before. And the story overall, from what up to I played of it, seems interesting. Um, I will say that this one, I do like it. There's so much about this game that I really enjoy. The story, though, I mean, I got quite a ways into it. I want to say I think I got about halfway or so, and I was really liking it up to what I played, but it wasn't quite like really hooking me the way some other Dragon Quest games have. For me, and again, I say this, having beat Dragon Quest 11, but Dragon Quest 8, for example, or even like Part 3 or. I haven't beaten Part 5, but I know that one too. What I played of it were really hooking me on the story. This one, not quite as much, but again, maybe I just still need to continue playing it to see how some of the things play out. But either way, though, it's a great RPG. If you want something that's kind of classic and modern at the same time, you can buy this on pretty much all the systems, modern consoles now, and definitely worth a look. Although I would recommend getting the S version, as that one has symphonic soundtrack, some quality of life improvements, I believe, little updates to the story or something like that. Just overall, it's just a better experience there. And yeah, I mean, either way, though, it's definitely a worthy entry into the Dragon Quest series. But next up is we have Donkey Kong Jr. And so this one here is kind of like a follow up to the arcade Donkey Kong games that were coming out in the early 1980s. And this one, you play Donkey Kong's son. I could be wrong, but I want to say that. So the son that you play, so Donkey Kong Jr. in this one, I think he eventually becomes Donkey Kong that you play in the Donkey Kong Country Super Nintendo games. I think. Something like that. But it's kind of more of the same where you're finding ways to rescue your dad, only now Mario is the bad guy in this one as he's holding him hostage. So kind of a flip on the script there, right on where previously it was Mario that had, or Jumpman, I guess you could say, that was trying to save Princess, or not, well, Princess, what's her name, Pauline in it. But yeah, I actually haven't played this one, so it'll be interesting capturing some footage for it. I just know that it was pretty popular back in the day, and it was in the early '80s, and then in the mid '90s where Donkey Kong was really popular during this earlier stretch here. And so this is just another sequel that came out in those early Donkey Kong games. But next up is Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. This game came out in 2021 on the PlayStation 5, and I gotta say that it was the first game that I played on the ninth generation system that I was really wowed by. Again, the level of like graphics and just overall the technology behind some of the video games that were coming out in the ninth generation, there wasn't that big of a leap, right, from the 8th to the ninth gen as there was even from the 7th to the 8th gen, and definitely not even before that, as we were just seeing huge leaps in graphics and all, in those previous generations. But it was definitely getting smaller as far as the big leap going forward. But this game, though, definitely did wow me, though. I mean, the graphics, the color, just overall the draw distance on some of the like environment and all is pretty stunning. And I mean, just when you're entering in the first area where you're in a parade, and then you see the crowd right in the audiences. Granted, some of them eventually kind of pop in as you get a little bit closer, but it's still really impressive overall. Just a beautiful looking game. And then the way it was using supposedly the solid state drive, where it was loading these levels really seamlessly, so you can transition between one level or the other, was pretty impressive. That's been sort of debunked a little bit, my understanding, when the PC version came out, that you don't necessarily need a solid state drive, but I'm pretty sure it helped, though. And either way, though, the effect is pretty cool. And yeah, just an amazing game. And I mean, so far, I haven't quite beaten this one either, but I've gone a ways into it and really need to go back and beat it, which is kind of a common theme for a lot of games in my backlog. But it's a beautiful game to look at, plays really well, pretty funny, characters are charming still as ever. We got Dr. Nefarious back, who's a bit of a prick, and it's kind of funny. But just, yeah, overall a great game. It's just the only bad thing, though, about it is the humor has been sanitized some, where it's a little bit more, I don't know, I always felt like the earlier Ratchet and Clank games had a little bit more edgy humor, which I really liked. This one, it's a bit toned down and all, but it's still pretty fun, though, overall, and definitely a cool game in the Ratchet and Clank series. But next up, we return back to Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Country. And so this is the one that came out originally on the Super Nintendo in 1994. It was developed by Rare, and they were using this really cool graphical technique where it was like they were taking like these 3D models and then somehow making them so that they're playable sprites, right? And kind of give it for like a 3D look almost. Kind of like, I guess, the CG models were looking like what they were trying to do with Toy Story back then and all. And made for a pretty impressive look. I mean, the game is still impressive to look at nowadays because of the low resolution of the Super Nintendo and all the sprites look a little chunky, right? They don't, but it's still pretty cool what they were doing back then, and the platforming is really spot on. I actually just beat this game fairly recently, and yeah, it's a great time. It's definitely almost rivals like some of the best Mario platformers out there, and just great game, great graphics for its time, cool music, and if you want like a great retro platformer, I mean, this is amongst one of the better ones. Well, this and Part 2 and Part 3 also are pretty well received overall. And yeah, I mean, it was definitely kind of started turning the tide for Super Nintendo in 1994, as the Genesis had a bit of a one-up on the Super Nintendo, but 1994 was just a killer year for the Super Nintendo, and this was one of the games that really helped push it above the Genesis. As after this game, there was just a lot of, well, I should say 1994 and going forward, there's just a lot of great games that came out on the system that eventually helped push it over the Sega Genesis in that console war there. But the next up is Dirge of Cerberus Final Fantasy VII. This game came out pretty late into the PlayStation 2's lifetime, I want to say in 2006. And so there was a compilation of Final Fantasy where they were coming out with a bunch of games related to Final Fantasy VII specifically. And Final Fantasy VII is my favorite game of all time. So when I first heard about this, I was pretty excited about it. But I gotta say that a lot of the stuff that came out during this compilation, some of it is okay, but nothing really that I felt was really needed. Like we had the Advent Children movie, which is all right. We had Crisis Core, which is pretty cool, but even then I have some issues with it. And this one also, this game. So what what this game is, it actually, to my understanding, as far as the timeline goes, it's the latest game in the Final Fantasy VII overall story. Because there's, if you're going kind of chronicle order, there's the events of Crisis Core came first, and there's some other like mobile games and all that I won't touch on base on those there. But Crisis Core came first, and then Final Fantasy VII, and then after that, Advent Children, and then after that, Dirge of Cerberus. So whatever happens after this game has just been kind of a mystery, and is it even worth exploring, right? I think it's kind of the question, and probably a lot of people will say probably not. Again, and I'm not including the remakes and all in this little timeline here because that's kind of its own story. But what I've played of it, it's a third-person shooter, which is interesting, right, for a Final Fantasy VII game, but you control Vincent. And so you go around just, kind of like these somewhat generic levels and all. It's not bad. The gameplay's polished enough and all. It's just that the level designs are fairly bland from what I played of it. And the story seems it's just not really too interesting. I haven't beaten the game myself, but I watched like a playthrough of it one time just to kind of get caught up on the story. And it's got some cool ideas, I guess. But, and if anything, it kind of fleshes out some characters that have some roles in other Final Fantasy projects, I'll say. But nothing that I feel is really like worthy or, something that that is really worth your time. The game has a bit of a reputation for being not that great. And again, I don't want to say like it's a horrible game. It's just not very inspired, right, and all based on the Final Fantasy property that it's based on. But I would say that if you're really into Final Fantasy VII, you love the overall story and all, just absolutely need to digest everything that is in this game, or the Final Fantasy VII universe, then sure, give it a playthrough, right? It is a bit hard to find though, I don't know for sure, but I think the physical copy is probably going for pretty expensive. It's not available anywhere else to play. You can emulate it, but it's definitely one of the harder games to emulate on the PlayStation 2. as you need a pretty strong system to play it, and even then, you might still get some glitches. But for what it is, though, again, I would only say I would only really recommend this for the really hardcore Final Fantasy VII fans that just that just have to absolutely have to play everything. And last up, though, is for let's see, Blasphemous, and so this is an indie game here. Um, that is a bit of a I don't know too much about it. I've played it a little bit, but it's like a kind of like a Metroidvania game, it seems like, but kind of a cross between also like Bloodborne or the Dark Souls games, as it has a very dark aesthetic to it. And the animation and the pixel art is actually really great. And so what I've played of it, I mean, it definitely seems difficult. The platforming and the action and all seems pretty tight. And so I'd be curious to play more of it, but I don't know, something about it just it looks cool. Like I love the art design and all, and the 2D graphics and everything, and the definitely seems really dark and all. But I don't know, something about it though. When I first played it, didn't like immediately hook me like the way some Metroidvania games do. So I don't know. Maybe when I try to capture some footage for this, it'll respark my interest in this game and see if it's any good. I know that the sequel got some pretty good recognition and review scores and all. So maybe they improved a lot on that one over what they couldn't quite do on this one. But either way, though, will be fun to check out. And if anything, it seems like it's if you like typical platformers and all, this would definitely be a choice. I know that the developers of the Ninja Gaiden Ragebound game developed this one also, so it kind of has like their signature on, you know, at least the graphical style, anyways. And but definitely a bloody game though, so it is a bit of a dark game. So that's what I got for these games here. And so if you've played any of them, certainly feel free to let me know your thoughts on them, or hopefully at least this give you some more games to add into your backlog. So let's now get into it with some modern gaming stuff. Just thought it was kind of cute. My daughters, they both started playing Street Fighter 6, and so they got into it. So it's been kind of funny watching them play and beat each other up. Street Fighter 6, I like. It's just something about it though that again, it just I don't know. Something about the art style and all that it's interesting, but just I don't know. Street Fighter 4 has been my more favorite one of these more modern Street Fighter games, but it's still pretty cool though, and they've been adding some new stuff to it. But it's just kind of funny watching them play it though, and all where one of the characters, Jury, I believe, her little comment that she said, "You can't." Oh, gee, I forget what she says, but anyways, one of my daughters has been mimicking that, and also has been kind of funny. But yeah, I guess if anything, they're getting use out of that game. There is again, I don't hate the game, but it's it's just not. I don't know. It's just it's amongst one of my least favorite Street Fighter games, right? Even but I say that right, really loving the series, so right overall. So even if it's not amongst my favorite, I still feel like it's a really solid fighter overall, right? But, I don't know. Maybe I should try to give that game a little bit more chance. But speaking of Street Fighter, so I'm going to go over some information here on some movie-related news that has to do with video games. So, as we had a few things that came out as far as for news info. First of that being is that they released the Street Fighter trailer, so or a new trailer for the movie, and so there's a second trailer that has come out. I it definitely looks really over the top, and I kind of like it for that. But I kind of need to see how it all plays out though, because at times I feel like the really crazy and zany look that they're going for the game, it can really work in its favor. Like if it's got some kick-ass karate action, but it doesn't take itself too seriously, then that could be a fun watch. I kind of like how like their costume design and all is going for to really like mimic the look of the game, but at the same time, um, it can look kind of off and almost just look like just very simple cosplay. And so I don't know, it's I have to see how it pans out, right? But I guess I mean, really, all I hope for it is just that it's got some cool karate in it, action, and that it's a decent movie, right? And fun enough movie. And I mean, it seems like it could be leaning towards that, but some of those costumes, though, I'm like, ooh, I don't know about that, but we'll see. We will see. Um, but another movie related news that has to do with video games. So they announced Call of Duty movies. Well, I think it had already been announced before that they were, it was in production, but they announced a release date, which is not going to be out for a while. It's going to be June 30th of 2028, and it looks like it's being distributed by Paramount. So cool. I mean, I don't know really what you could do with a Call of Duty movie that's not just like another war movie, right? I mean, I don't know what the Call of Duty name could bring to that, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if anything comes of that. But yeah, that's as much as I know. That they didn't really, provide more info than that. But another thing too, also, so there was CinemaCon that has been going on this week, and God, I hope they release that Doomsday trailer because it looks like they showed it off to a select few people, and so I hope that it comes out, online here soon. But another thing that from my understanding, because I couldn't find it online, but it looks like they showed off another trailer to the Resident Evil movie that is being directed by Zach Krager. So he's done recently like movies like Barbarian and Weapon, which are sort of like these kind of horror movies, but I don't know. He has a certain style that I mean, it's pretty cool. But I the weapon I hadn't seen Barbarian, but Weapon I was a bit disappointed. I'm like, I like the concept to it. I thought it was cool, but then like the payoff, I was like, I don't know. It kind of. I think I talked about it some episodes back on how I compared it to. I use that movie as a comparison for like things that like even in video games where like the story and the premise is really interesting at first, but then something about the payoff and all that just doesn't land for me personally, right? I know that movie was pretty popular, so just that's just my opinion on it. But anyways, this dude is doing Resident Evil, and so that seems interesting. I'm open to seeing what happens of this because from what it sounded like, I saw somebody describing the trailer, and it seems like it's definitely going to a more survival horror style, where the other Resident Evil movies that had come out, the one with Mia Jovanovic in it, they were much more action oriented, right, with some horror elements in it. And the first one was pretty fun. I think I saw the second one too, but I never really followed up on that series afterwards because there was a lot of them that came out. But this one seems to be more like it's meant to be more scary. So we'll see. I mean, it sounds interesting. It has my interest. I'd be curious to see how that all shapes out. But another news though that came out regarding movies, because this is getting a bit of a controversy, was Metal Gear Solid, the movie. So they're moving forward with it. So this had been announced some time ago, and because I know that they had gotten Oscar Isaac to play Snake, but then after that we never really heard much more news on it. Well, we got some more now, and so I'm just kind of reading off of a headline here. Metal Gear Solid movie in the works from Final Destination Duo as a Inc. Sony first look exclusive. So Zach Lipovsky and Adam Stein have become among the more in-demand filmmakers in town. So the Final Destination Bloodlines movie was pretty cool, but now Sony has snapped them up for an expansive deal that could cover all of studio's film labels. So I don't know. I'm gonna see if I can find a little bit more info here as I'm talking, but I've said before, right? The Metal Gear has a certain style. It's I mean it's a bit silly, right, at times, but it also has a certain drama to it, and also a certain sense of like techno jargon. The way it blends the fantastical with the reality, and that's done in a pretty cool way that it seems like only Hideo Kojima could really do this series justice. And so for games, obviously, right, but let alone with um, with movies. And so I guess I'm not 100% sure how this is going to play out, right? But basically, I'm just kind of reading here something really quick from Skynet. So, a Metal Gear Solid movie is in development at Sony Pictures with Final Destination Bloodlines director Zach Lipovsky of Adam Stein attached to direct, following a long and troubled production history. The project has seen various stages of development since 2006, with Oscar Isaac previously attached to star as Solid Snake, though recent reports suggest this may have changed. The film aims to bring Hideo Kojima's iconic character and world to the big screen, with producer A.V. Arad involved. Um, so 2020, yeah, was when Oscar Isaac was cast, but then there was nothing after that. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's we'll see. Nothing that I'm like really crazily anticipating. As again, I just always feel like sometimes certain games just shouldn't be translated to movies. But I'll keep an open mind on it and see if anything comes from that. But we did get some games that came out this week that were pretty well done. They got pretty good reviews overall. For the most part, from at least from what I saw, I got a chance to play two of them at least briefly. But the first one is for Mouse PI for Hire. This game, it's like a first-person shooter, but in a very cartoony world, like a black and white cartoon, kind of like the old Disney cartoons. And so it almost seems like kind of think of it like Mickey Mouse, Steamboat Willie, but like you're a private or you're like a detective or a cop, like in a very noir style detective setting. And it seems interesting. The art style definitely has my interest. And from the reviews that I was seeing, it got decent reviews overall, from what I can tell. Not the greatest reviews, but not but definitely not bad. And so it seems like a really unique game. So I'd be curious to try this game out. I was hoping that there was a demo of it, but I couldn't find one in the bit that I looked. Um, but it seems interesting, so it has my attention. Another one though was Pragmata, so from Capcom that came out, and this game was getting a lot of hype, and I don't know, something about it just wasn't really like. I was like, okay, well, I don't see what the big deal is, but it was getting a lot of hype. It was getting decent reviews overall, so I was like, all right, well, let's check it out. So I downloaded a demo on the Xbox, and I played it for just like like maybe like 10 minutes or so, just to get a taste of what it's all about. And the little bit that I played, I was like, okay, this is actually kind of interesting. It's a 3D shooter, so a third person shooter, but it has like this cool like hacking mechanic in it on how you can hack these robots that you're fighting. And I don't understand what's going on in the story, but the way you do that though is pretty cool. So basically, you're aiming down like your gun, but then when you do that, you get like this grid that appears, and so you have to uh, get to an appropriate spot in the grid by using the buttons on it, right? And so then if you're able to hack it correctly, then the enemy becomes weaker. And also, it was pretty. And maybe I'm not describing it that well, but it was pretty seamless though, and I thought that was pretty interesting. And so something that I feel. I mean, it seemed like it was. It seemed like it could be a really fun gameplay loop. So it started clicking in my head. I was like, okay, I can see how this game was probably getting a lot of popularity recently, and so one that I don't know, I might consider getting at some point, but yeah, just it's still kind of expensive right now. Maybe if it goes on sale sometime, I might consider getting it. But another game though that I only got to play it for like about 10 minutes, and it's a game that I've been talking about already that it really has had my interest, and that's for Replaced. So it's like this 2.5D cyberpunk game, and it has like this really cool pixel art style, right, for the characters, but then the backgrounds all look like 3D, and it always looked really unique to me. And so it finally came out, and so the game, for the most part, was getting decent reviews, but it does seem like it is a bit of a mixed bag. From what I've played, it definitely has my interest, right? It's you start off kind of breaking out of this facility. Um, and the story seems interesting. Where I was seeing some people kind of talk a little bit bad about it was that it seems like it's a bit of a talky game, right? So there's a lot of conversation and dialogue in it, and it doesn't, as far as I can tell, it's not voice, so there's a lot of text to go through. And the first little part that I played, I was like, okay, yeah, it has some. Which I mean, if the story's cool, I wouldn't mind like more of a slow burn game because immediately it kind of like reminded me of Flashback, and I really loved that game right back in the day on the Sega Genesis. Um, but we'll see. It's what was the other thing that they were talking about? Because the combat seemed like, for the most part, it seemed like it was pretty good, but it get clunky. But it seems like it's kind of like based off of like something like Arkham Knight, so like, or Arkham Asylum games. I was like, okay, that's interesting in a 2D game. And but the main thing that I kept seeing up was that the combat was pretty cool, but a bit clunky, and that there's a lot of dialogue in it, and then something to do also with the save points, right? So again, it's not a perfect game by no means, but what I kept hearing though is that it's a game that is not perfect, but people really wanted to love it though, because the overall premise and the concept of it is really cool. And like I said, in those 10 minutes that I played of it, I was like, okay, I think this is going to be a game that, because I also kept hearing that it's a game that you're either gonna love it or hate it, or maybe not necessarily hate, but not fully like it. I think I might fall in the love it category because again, I'm just a sucker for like the cyberpunk stuff. Seems like a really unique concept to a game, and I've been definitely itching to play another game like Flashback. And so I don't know. I think I might like this game. I would say if I mean it's $20, or if you have Game Pass, it's on there, and so worth a look, right? And all if you wanted to, if it sounds like something you're into, look up a trailer, see if it's something. I mean, like I said, the art style, if anything, looks amazing on it, right? So, and a little bit that I played of it, I mean, the controls seem pretty good. But I guess I have to play it more, right, to really get an idea of what it's all about. All right, but going into just like regular gaming news, just across all platforms or just various platforms and such, we are getting a new system coming out, and it's a blast from the past. Neo Geo is back, so bigger, badder, better. I just literally saw this in this morning, and so I just made some quick notes about it, and I was like, "What is this?" And so basically, Neo Geo is coming back. So it's the Neo Geo Advanced Entertainment System, and I mean, as far as I can tell, it's a pretty accurate replica of the original hardware with the big old control sticks too, also. And it also is compatible with the original game carts as well too. So if you happen to have some lying around, it looks like you can play it on there, and it's going to come out with 10 games. I just kind of, like I said, I just saw the little advertisement for it. So let's see, I saw Magician Lord, one of the Samurai Showdown games, the Mark of Wolves game. I think there was like a golf game, Metal Slug, and some other ones. But so I don't know if they're all getting released like at the same time or not. I'm not sure, but the pre-orders are out though. Although I did see in the comments on the video I was watching that it seems like it's already sold out. But it comes out, looks like on November 12th of 2026. So there's like the regular black edition, right? And all it looks very reminiscent of like the old school Neo Geo. And there's also like a anniversary edition, which is like all white, which looks pretty sleek also. And that one comes with Metal Slug, the cart of it. And so it looks like the regular version, it's for $249.99, where the anniversary edition that comes with Metal Slug is at $349.99. Those are American prices. I apologize, I didn't quite catch like the prices for the other regions. But that's cool. I mean, for anyone that still wants, the old school hardware, but again, that hardware can eventually wear down. This is awesome. I think this is cool for like collectors. I mean, that's something I would get. I mean, I think it's cool, but I've talked about before, right? And all how this stuff just takes up a lot of space. But I think that's awesome, though, and I'm glad this is coming out, and so people can experience Neo Geo games like the way it was back then, but not quite maybe as expensive. I would hope. I don't know how much the carts are going to cost. I would hope that they're cheaper than back then, which was like over $100. Excuse me, but I think that's cool though. That's a cool thing. From what I gathered, right, and all people talking about it, people seem to be pretty excited about it. So that is cool. Let's see. All right. So for the next story, this has to do about regulations that are being made on live service games. So this is a bit interesting, and I caught just a video of it, just a quick video, and so I took a screenshot here that the YouTuber Spawnwave did. So I wanted to read this and all because I think this is interesting. I mean, this could potentially, uh, I don't, again, I don't know how much impact this is going to have. It's just, I have no faith that these big corporations and all, right, that they're going to continue to find ways to screwing their consumers over. But going to this thing here, article that came out on this. So this is all kind of tied back to that Stop Killing Games, right, campaign that we had talked about also last week, and then also 3 weeks prior. So it's an ongoing story. And so basically, so Stop Killing Games, a campaign seeking to prevent online games being rendered unplayable when publishers shut down their service or their service, have moved to support a California bill that, in its current form, would require studios to either update games with impending server shutterings to keep working independently afterwards, or provide full refunds. The movement also claims their UK efforts are far from dead in the water, noting that they called in to advise the Department of Culture, Media, and Sports last week. The Californian legislation it's cited in Stop Killing Games' latest progress update on Reddit is dubbed the Protect Our Games Act, and was initially put forward by Chris Ward, a member of California State Assembly, in February this year. Stop Killing Games say they had a hand in advising on the drafting of it. Requires companies to sell server-connected video games to notify consumers before ending support and to provide clear information about how the game will function once it reaches its end life. Reads an overview of the Act's aim on Ward's website. The bill also prohibits companies from selling the game within 2 months of its end of life date and requires them to either replace the game or provide a plan following users to continue running it after support ends. Taking a look at the bill on California's legislation info site, it appears that to have spent the past months or so going through revisions. The current version outlined in the text, which hasn't been crossed out, would affect games put on sale after January 1st of 2027. It would require publishers to provide one or more of the following options from the day a game service are shut down. A version of the digital game that can be used by the purchaser independent of servers controlled by the operator, a patch to update the purchaser's version of the digital game that enables it to continued use independent of services controlled by the operator, and or a refund of the amount equal to the paid full purchase price paid for the digital game by the purchaser. I'm got a tongue tied on that one, but all right. So yeah, that absolutely seems fair, right? Will it actually happen and all? Who knows? Again, because I don't trust these companies are gonna, just submit to this, right? They'll probably push back on it, but that's absolutely fair. I mean, it's if because again, it's kind of like going like like disposable content, right? So kind of like seeing it like you subscribe to Netflix, you like watching a show on there, you're watching it, you're loving it, cool, right? And then suddenly you stop subscribing to Netflix and then it's gone, right? Now you don't have access to it. I mean, kind of sort of the same thing only in this here, though. The problem with this is it's, but I mean, they're trying to treat it like that, basically. The only difference, though, is that when you purchase a game, you actually purchase to own it, right? Not to technically like rent it as you're subscribed to the service. And so that you should have some ownership of that or some sense of like compensation for it, but they're kind of looking at it like, well, you played the game a lot for, like, let's say The Crew, right? They listed what in 2014 or 2000, the game came out in 2014, got listed recently. So let's say that game was roughly out for about 10 years, right, before it got delisted. And so their argument would be that, well, you got 10 years of usage for it. That's not the point. The point is that you bought something, you want to own it, right? Now, I think if you're playing a live service game, I think there is a certain expectation of that eventually the service can get shut down. So it's kind of like those, proceed with caution kind of thing. But I still feel like, if you've been putting money towards this, there should be some sort of like compromise on this and all, as far as what happens when the servers get shut down, because that'll be inevitably when it happens. And so my hope is that something of this goes through, because again, I don't really care for live service games, but my hope is that this continues to snowball into other things too, like your digital purchases and all of that you made on certain storefronts, right, where you could continue to keep owning them, or somehow have a way of downloading them even when the server shut down. So kind of think about like the Wii U shop, right, or the 3DS, or even the Microsoft Xbox 360 shop. It's like, even though they're shutting down the servers, you can still continue to download the games or have access to them, right? And so, I mean, that's more than fair, but I just know that there's going to be some pushback on it probably. I hope something comes out of this. I think it's definitely something that would need to happen. But we'll see what comes out. I'll try to keep up on that story as much as I can. But we're getting over to Nintendo Switch 2 stuff. And so one of the bigger news stories that were coming out on this is that it looks like Nintendo might have secretly added different file sizes now. So the Nintendo Switch 2, the card sizes have been for 64 gigabytes. And then there's the game key cards. But game key cards are just basically have a little bit of data to unlock the game, which you're basically still downloading digitally. You just have to have the card to actually unlock it, right? But the games that are actually fully on the car, there's only been the 64 gigabyte size. And there's been a lot of controversy with that, right? Because there's only a handful of games that have been doing that. Well, I mean, like the Nintendo games have been coming out on the cards, and then games like Cyberpunk and also were also able to fit on the car. But there's a bit of controversy also where supposedly, according to like the developer of the Star Wars Outlaws games, is that they can't stream the data fast enough on the card to make it render the game world correctly, and so meaning that it's better to play it on digital, right? So there's that controversy as well too. And then also because these cards are kind of expensive and the only one that's available is a 64 gig card, it's just not very profitable for a lot of companies to use that card. So like, let's say if you have a game that's like 10 gigabytes and you have to get the 64 gigabyte one because there's nothing smaller and your game is, on the cheaper end, well, you're not going to make a lot of profit on that if you get, put it on the card. So everyone's just been opting to do either digitally or the game key card thing, right? Well, it seems like people that have been finding out that Nintendo might have secretly released some of these different cart sizes. Looks like it's still being investigated as people are still trying to figure out if there's some kind of a system to this. But there's a game that came out, Mio. It seems to be some kind of a Metroidvania. I'm not 100% sure, but it looks like it's a smaller game in size, and so um, it seems like at the very least, what people have been finding out is that that game is about 16 gigabytes. And so seems like there's at least maybe a 16 gigabyte card out there. Maybe, and again, they might be shipping out more. So it's an ongoing story, and so we'll see what comes of that later. But that seems to be the case, though, and so I guess that's cool, right, for people that want physical copies of games, and and where developers are going to be more encouraged to use the smaller card sizes now, right? Because it's not going to be quite as expensive for them. So hopefully something of that pans out. We talked a bit about a few weeks ago about like the R-Type scenario, right? Where they had announced that they were going to use a smaller card size. They kind of got their hand slapped right by Nintendo. And so it seems like there's ultimately some kind of truth to all that. So hopefully that'll continue on. And, where that way more reasonable and affordable physical copies are made available to consumers. But the Switch 2 had some game leaks that came out, and this is for a lot of this is for like third party games, um, and I think it was on um, the ESRB rating board. I think something like that I saw, and so again, all these games were coming out. Um, And so let me see if I can find a list here of some of the games that were leaked. And so again, the expectation is that these games are indeed going to come out. Let's see. So there was Diablo 4, Guardians of the Galaxy also. So the one that came out a few years ago, that's like the third person kind of shooter game. And there was several other ones. Those are just the ones, let's see, that I can find here real quick. But there was a bunch of other ones too also. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Hopefully those games do come out. I gotta say that the Nintendo Switch 2, when it comes to like third party stuff, right, it's really been doing good. It's not going to be quite the best versions of those games to play. There has been some that have been a bit not quite as good translations. So, for example, I saw something that the Overwatch 2 game is coming out on the Switch 2, and I mean, I don't know how much people are still interested in that game, but it looks like the port wasn't very well done. But then you get things like a lot of the Capcom games, like Pragmata seems to like to be a really decent port. Resident Evil Requiem is a pretty good port. The Final Fantasy VII integrated remake integrated is a really good port. And so again, it's not going to be the best play these games. Excuse me, but you can play them on there, and they're perfectly playable versions if you don't mind having the best and the greatest as far as graphics goes, and also that they're portable. And then if Nintendo starts rolling out some of their heavy hitter first party games, the Nintendo Switch 2 is a good system to own, I feel, right? I still think it's in its proving stage as far as what its overall impact is going to be, but I think the potential is there. Again, sales figures notwithstanding, I know that there's a lot of back and forth if it's selling good, if it's not selling good. I think that they're in a bit of hot water, right? Just from what I've been seeing, where, supposedly they've had to cut back on production and all. But for me personally, I think the Nintendo Switch 2 is an excellent system for my personal usage of it as of right now, but I'm also saying that expecting that they're going to be coming out with some really cool first party games. So like when I look back at the lifetime of the Nintendo Switch 2 in the years to come, so far the third party support has been great. And because this is kind of a first for Nintendo in a long while, where they were able to get a lot of the heavy hitter third party games out there too. I mean, really, it's been since the GameCube, right? Um, but if I could look back and say, and we also had a kick-ass Mario game, a kick-ass new Zelda game, and an awesome new Metroid game, then that's really going to be the telling of the success of the system, right? And so again, it's just something I can't really gauge right now. It's just something we're going to have to wait and see. But overall, though, it's pretty cool though that it's getting a lot of this third-party support. Again, not going to be the best play to play these games, but as long as they do the ports well, it would be a good play to play them. And again, I can't stress enough how much. How much appreciated it is to have a system that is hybrid, right? Where you can play on the go and then play docked onto your TV too. Let's see. But then moving on over to the Xbox. So it looks like Asha is, she's continuing to make some moves there. looks like she Xbox or her, I believe, came out saying like acknowledging that Game Pass is expensive, right? It's kind of like, yeah, obviously, but at the very least they're acknowledging it, and so it seems like they're probably trying to change some things when it comes to Xbox Game Pass. I saw some rumors and all that supposedly they might change it up a little bit. So, for example, where they might remove some games from a tier to offer it for cheaper, or I don't know how much of this is true, but I even heard something about that they might be um, they might be because there was talks about how Call of Duty may not come out on Game Pass anymore, right? Like the way they've been trying to do, because it's just a bit too expensive, right, to do that. And but maybe they might offer another tier that it does, but it'll be more expensive though. So it sounds like they're trying to give people options, right? And so, I mean, at the very least, I think it's cool that they're looks like they're evaluating it, and we'll see what comes of it. But that's the last bit that I saw there, is that at least they're acknowledging that Game Pass has been very expensive for Microsoft, and so they're looking on restructuring it to some extent. What that's all going to look like, I don't know, but we'll see though. But then jumping over to Sony, so it looks like Bloodborne is getting an animated movie and is being produced by, I don't know, they mentioned the guy's name. I'm not familiar with him, but it looks like he seems to be a pretty popular YouTuber. But just to kind of read something here that I saw on Variety, it's PlayStation's Bloodborne is being developed into a R-rated animated feature for Sony Pictures that the studio says will embrace the carnage that made the game so popular. Then Sanford Panic, president of Sony Pictures Entertainment Motion Picture Group, promised during the studio's CinemaCon presentation that the long-rumored film will be very true to the gory spirit of Bloodborne, which follows a traveler whose journey into a gothic city full of nightmarish creatures. So yeah, that's cool. I guess yeah. I mean, like I said, I Bloodborne. I think it's cool for what it is. Again, it was last week that I talked about Bloodborne, and I hope to get into the game some soon. But I just kind of suck at those games. But I like the concept to it and everything. So if they can make a pretty cool animated movie of some sort, that'd be cool. But jumping over to Starfield, though, that came out on the PlayStation 5 fairly recently. So this game originally came out on the Xbox. It was supposed to be an exclusive on the Xbox, but then we all know how that went. And so then eventually got ported over to the PlayStation 5. And so the hope was that maybe there, with all the patches that it's had and updates and all, that it was going to find new life on there. Doesn't seem too much. The reports are coming out that it only sold about 140K copies. And I think I saw something like the profit was it like 3 million or so? I mean, it sounds like a high number, right? But the people have been looking at it like how much the game costs to make and all that. It's barely breaking even for a game as expansive as Starfield, which was supposed to be a generational game. And so, I've played a little bit of Starfield, and I mean, it seems like I could catch my interest, but it does seem like it is a big time commitment and just a constant loading on it that you have to go through between screens or between areas. It just seems like it holds the game back some. And then I heard something about that you have to beat the game to really unlock the full potential of it or something like that. I don't know. It's just usually I'm down for Bethesda games, but this one, it's not one that I've been truly wanting to play. So that's a bit shameful, I guess, on the Starfield port to the PlayStation 5, as it seemed like they were hoping that the bigger audience on the PlayStation would, absorb this game more, but doesn't seem to be the case. So it looks like the game is just not that great, right? I mean, it doesn't seem like it's horrible. It's just not up to their best standards, and probably which is reflecting the lackluster sales on it. But a bit of a hint, though, that they are indeed working on the Spider-Man 3 game. So I mean, this is pretty much already assumed, right? But the actor or motion capture actor Ben Jordan, who I believe does a motion capture, and I believe the face actor, like his face for Spider-Man 3 for Peter Parker, I think. But he made a social media post where it's like him, looks like he's starting to get into a motion capture suit, and he's doing like the web hands, and then it just says something like he just has on there, if the abbreviations IYKYK, like if you know, very much hinting right and all that he's in the studio right now, probably recording sessions for the new upcoming Spider-Man game. So again, nothing officially confirmed, but that definitely seems to point in that direction. So yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, I think everyone pretty much expected that there would be a new Spider-Man game coming out, but yeah, that's pretty cool though. But the last story I want to touch on here is, so PlayStation 6, we're already talking about that, and it's causing some controversy already, no surprise. And it seems that there's a few things coming out about it, potentially that it may cost up to $1,000, but it may also be like cheaper, like around 649 or so, I think is the number that I saw thrown around. So what is going on here? Well, it looks like they might be doing something similar to what the Xbox did with the Xbox Series X and S, where they're going to have like a more powerful version and then a cheaper version, and then also on handheld, somehow all thrown into the mix. And so that stirred a lot of controversy there, right? Because there's been so Xbox has been doing this, right? Where they were forcing developers to that their games were also to come out on the if it came out on the Xbox Series X, it has to come out on the S, and so they have to figure out a way to program this. And so originally, the story that was coming out was that there wasn't going to be much of a compromise, and that it wasn't really affecting development. But there's been some developers that have come out since then, right, stating that it has actually. And so, just to kind of read a few things here, let's see that I saw. Let's see. So someone just said here, how so if a handheld already exists as user keyboard? Making something look good on a small 1080p screen is different from making it look good on a large 4K TV. We also don't know if Sony will mandate handheld support. So that's kind of more regarding the handheld of it. But so here's a quote from, I don't know who exactly made this quote, but basically, so Xbox held back an entire generation. The Xbox Series S is now getting blamed for holding back gaming as a whole. I wish the Series S never existed, man. He said. So I don't know who exactly made this quote, but so annoying to optimize for that console. I expect we'll unfortunately see more game launches get skipped by Xbox in the future. Um, and so, like for example, the Baldur's Gate 3, right? That was one where they couldn't quite get to work on the Xbox Series S because of its split screen multiplayer on it. Um, and so, you know, yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like the Xbox Series S did hold back gaming some, and And so now if Sony's doing the same thing, right? Well, it's like, why are you guys doing this? It's like if you're going to get a PlayStation 6, we're really wanting the best of the best, if you're going to plunk down the money for that. But, there's also this too, right? And I don't know how well this will correlate with what PlayStation is doing or overall. And this is data from 2022. But basically it says, so during a big leak of Xbox court documents last year, so talking about earlier, right? But we learned that as of April 2022, 74.8% of Xbox Series owners globally owned an S, and 25.1% owned an X. So maybe they're looking at that, right? And maybe they're looking at everything going on in the economy. It's like you want the latest and greatest, but if there's a cheaper option, that can, that's still affordable for people. Maybe that's what they're thinking. But I don't know. I mean, I love my Xbox Series S because I can use it as an emulation device. That's really why I got it, right? Otherwise, I kind of don't see the whole purpose of it. But that's the only reason I bought it, because it's kind of cool how you can do emulation on that system there. And so that's been kind of like my go-to system that I have plugged into the TV that I can do emulation on. A lot of the videos that I do on my YouTube Shorts for like older games it's because I'm playing them on the Xbox Series S, and so I love it for that there. But if I'm talking about because I want a system for the latest and greatest, but I mean, I get it. Yeah, it's cheaper, but then you're also compromising, right? And so I don't know. I don't know if it's the best strategy for them. And then how are they going to fit a handheld into that? Because if you're doing a handheld, that's kind of the same thing where it's like it's like it can play PlayStation 6 games, but it's they have to be scaled down some. So kind of like the Xbox Series S, only in a portable form. Well, now you got what is that going to be, 3 SKUs now? And so I don't know. It seems like that's a lot, right? That they're trying to do, and it doesn't really spark much confidence. But maybe they're onto something, right? And again, maybe the data really is showing that that's what people want. It just seems like kind of a weird move, and the fact that we're already talking about the PlayStation 6 is fucking mind-boggling. But but I mean, it's the expectation is that it would come out in late 2027, so next year. And I mean, that's 7 years, right? That's around the in line, right, with what generations have lasted. But I don't know. Things are getting weird now in the video game industry. Things are expensive to sell. Everything is expensive to sell. dogs and cats living together. The world's falling apart. So, and video games are fucking expensive now. What else are we going to do, right? Maybe we should just go Breaking Bad and, start selling, meth or some shit to get money. Don't do that, kids. That's horrible. That's wrong. But either way, though, it's getting interesting. Video gaming is getting very interesting now. And as far as just trying to get into the hobby, I've talked about it before. That's why I'm sort of kind of bowing out a little bit about keeping up with the latest and greatest. And I'm really just kind of leaning more in towards just getting into my backlog, right? I have tons of games there for a lifetime. And I'm finding some peace with that there as everything's just getting weird now and expensive, the way games are being distributed. Um, it's just not. I mean, the gaming was always a bit expensive, but now it's getting just crazy. And where it seems to be only like the most privileged will be able to play games. I mean, it seems to be heading in that direction. And then not only that, but just gaming design choices and all kinds of stuff that it's like, okay, well, I'm not really being sold on this hobby as much anymore for where it's going forward. I'll always have love for it from what's come before, which is why I even have this YouTube channel to begin with. But I don't know. Things are getting interesting, but we'll see what comes of all this, though.
Did have one other story, though, that I wanted to touch base on that I just saw. I believe it might have come out either this morning as of this recording, which is, let's see, May 19th or possibly yesterday, May 18th. But this has to do with a game that I've been really anticipating, and that's for that He-Man, the Masters of the Universe, Dragon Pearl of Destruction. So it's the arcade beat-em-up style game. And so they released a notice here. I would assume the developers or publishers. So I'll just read here what they said. So special notice to the heroic warriors of Eternia. We're nearing the end of development for He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, Dragon Pearl of Destruction. To ensure that this release will excite and challenge fans across all generations, additional time for development is needed. So it's getting delayed. But we can assure you that you will be venturing through Eternia in no time as He-Man, Teela, Man-at-Arms, and She-Ra in peak arcade glory. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, Dragon Pearl of Destruction will be released digitally this summer on Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series S and S, and PC. Thank you for your continued patience as we take additional time to refine the game and deliver an experience worthy of fans. We look forward to welcoming players into Eternia as they join He-Man in defending the planet of the planet from Skeletor. It's a bit of a bummer because that game was going to come out, I think, on the 26th. Maybe not the 26th. Sometime this month, if I recall right. But it looks like it's getting pushed out a few more months. So, not the end of the world, but I was looking forward to playing that. So, oh well. Maybe also will kind of tie into the He-Man movie as well, too. Which, that movie there, it looks okay. We'll see, right? It kind of gives me the vibes of like the first Thor movie, which I actually didn't half mind that. Actually, not. I did kind of like that first Thor movie. I didn't think it was too bad. So if anything, if it's any at least enjoyable as that, great. But if it's anything, even better, cool, right? We'll see. I'm kind of a sucker for the '80s. Masters of the Universe movie with Dolph Lundgren in it, which I just found out you can watch on YouTube for free. So that's I like that movie there. But anyways, it'll come out soon from what it looks like. But all right, let's get into the year of 2016. So like I said earlier, 2016 is not, one of the more memorable years for me, but there's definitely some good stuff that came out for it, right? There's always good games that come out. It's just that when I think of like what my favorite game of this year is, it's great, but it's definitely not one of the more just if I think about like the overall history of video games, right, and all, there's not really much games that came out this year that are really like truly must plays in the overall grand pantheon of video games, right? But there's still some really good stuff though. So, like I said, every year, even if I say it's kind of a slow year, every year there's good stuff to play. Don't get me wrong. But just to go over some statistics and events that happened this year. So, numerous video games were released in 2016. New hardware came out, as well as largely refreshed and updated versions of the consoles in the PlayStation 4 Pro, PlayStation 4 Slim, and Xbox One S. Commercially available virtual reality headsets were released in much greater numbers and at much lower price points than the enthusiast-only virtual headsets of earlier generations. Augmented reality also became mainstream with Pokemon Go. Anyone remember that? Top-rated games originally released in 2016 include Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, Inside, Overwatch, Forza Horizon 3, Madden NFL 17, WWE 2K17, NBA 2K17, Dark Souls 3, and Battlefield 1, and Doom 2016. The top highest grossing video games of 2016 were the usual suspects from before. So it's League of Legends, Honor of Kings, Arena of Valor, Monster Strike, Clash of Clans, and Dungeon Fighter Online. Series with new installments in 2016 include Ace Attorney, Battlefield, Call of Duty, Civilization, Cossacks, Dark Souls, Dead Rising, Deus Ex, Dishonored, Digimon Doom, Drive Club, Far Cry, FIFA, Final Fantasy, Fire Emblem, Forza Horizon, Gears of War, Hearts of Iron, Hitman, Homefront, Homeworld, Kirby, Mafia, Mario Party, Master of Orion, Metroid, Mirror's Edge, Paper Mario, Persona, Plants vs. Zombies, Garden Warfare, The Playroom, Pokemon, Ratchet & Clank, Shadow of the Beast, Shadow Warrior, Sonic the Hedgehog, Star Fox, Star Ocean, Street Fighter, Titanfall, Total War, Uncharted, Watch Dogs, XCOM, and Zero Escape. In addition, 2016 saw the introduction of several new properties, including Abzu, Hyper Light Drifter, Inside, The Last Guardian, No Man's Sky, Owlboy, Abduction, Overwatch, Quantum Break, Stardew Valley, Tom Clancy's The Division, and The Witness. So for financial performance, the analyst firm SuperData estimated that the global video game software market brought in $91 billion in revenue in 2016. This was an increase over the $74 billion estimated for 2015, but SuperData noted that their 2016 estimates included a larger data set. Of the $91 billion, $41 billion was attributed to mobile gaming, particularly the titles Clash Royale and Pokemon Go, with the largest mobile gaming section in Asia with total revenues near $25 billion. Wow. Personal computer video games made up $34 billion with $19 billion contributed from free-to-play games and console games, retail and downloadable, were 26 and $6.6 billion respectively. The firm also identified that virtual reality, professional video game, sports, and streaming were still growing markets in this year. DFC Intelligence reported numerous revenues in the various sectors and noted that mobile gaming revenues overtook both consoles and personal computer revenues in 2016. But Newzoo estimated that $70.4 billion of video game revenues were made by the top 25 publicly traded companies led by Tencent, Sony, Activision Blizzard, Microsoft, and Apple. The top 10 companies brought in more than 54% of gross revenues during 2016, up from 43% in 2015. So Tencent brought in $10.2 billion, Sony did $7.9 billion, Activision Blizzard did $6.6 billion, Microsoft did $6.5 billion, and Apple did $5.9 billion. Wow. So IHS Markit estimated that worldwide revenue related to console hardware, software, and services was $34.7 billion, down from 2.5% from 2015. Hardware sales were down from $12.8 billion to $10.5 billion, while software and service revenues were up. Sony held about 50% of the market share during 2016, followed by Microsoft and Nintendo. Within the United States, revenue from the video game industry in 2016 was estimated at $30.4 billion by the Entertainment Software Association and NPD Group, slightly up from 2015's $30.2 billion. Of that, $24.5 billion was spent on video game software, an increase of 6% from 2015. Digital purchases, which included full game purchases, downloadable content, game subscriptions, and mobile game microtransactions, made up 74% of this number, continuing a steady increase of digital sales over retail since 2010. Sales were driven by the introduction of VR, Pokemon Go, and Pokemon Sun and Moon. In the games Battlefield 1, Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, Madden NFL 17, NBA 2K17, and Tom Clancy's The Division. Wow. So the highest grossing games of 2016. So again, this includes for digital purchases, microtransactions, free to play, and pay to play across all platforms like mobile, PC, and console. 6 of the top 10 highest grossing games were published and or owned by Tencent. So again, we're going to see kind of the usual suspects here at the top from like the previous, 2 years now. But number 1 was League of Legends was 1,700,000,000. Number 2 was Honor of Kings, Arena of Valor with 1,610,000,000. Number 3 was Monster Strike with 1,300,000,000. God, it's just crazy just throwing those numbers out there. Number 4 was Clash of Clans with 1,200,000,000. Number 5 was Dungeon Fighter Online with 1,100,000,000. Number 6 was Clash Royale with 1,100,000,000. And also tied at number 6 was, or I guess, no, well, it says number 6 for these two, but then the next one is number 8. So I'm going to assume number 7 then. Crossfire, 1,100,000,000. Puzzles and Dungeons, 955,000,000. Pokemon Go was 950,000,000. And Game of War, Fire Age, 910,000,000. So all of these games here are some kind of like a free-to-play or mobile game of some sort. None of the games that are on this list here are like your typical standard single-player video game experience, right? Not even like a console mobile or like a console multiplayer game. Wow. I mean, I know these games have dominated, but just as I'm looking at this list here, I mean, it's like, so again, as we talked about before, right? Why do companies try to go after the live service game, the free-to-play games and all? There it is. Right, it's the numbers. It's what that's what it comes down to. That's what they're looking at. They don't really care like, oh, you don't get your single player game experience or whatever. No, they're looking at the numbers, and these are the games that make the most money. And so that's why for them it is worth it to risk everything. Right, like just I guess to touch a little bit more on modern gaming news. There's already rumors going around that from what it looks like whatever they're doing with this Fairgrounds game or Fair Play game or whatever it's called, that other live service game that Sony's got in the works, people are already anticipating that it's going to be a flop, right? Just from what people have seen and heard and whatnot. And so again, the question is like, why do they keep doing this, right? If they keep flopping, well, because of these numbers right here that you're seeing, right? With these free-to-play style games or, it's just where the money's at, the majority of the money's at. And again, it's not that there hasn't been like profitable single player games and all, it's just that this is where the money's at for the video game industry, starting from around this stretch here, right? Like let's say in the mid 2010s or so. And for someone like me, right, that's grown up in gaming, everything that I've been talking about already from past episodes and such, that's the kind of gaming that I've liked. That's the gaming that I've been used to and all, what I'm used to as far as like what a good game is, what sells good and whatnot. But this is where the shift started turning though. And this is, I think, and part of the reason why gaming kind of started losing me a little bit, right? Again, there's still going to be amazing stuff that comes out, right? Like, stuff that I'm going to mention this year, next year, especially, is going to be really good and so forth, right? It's just that when it comes down to the profitability, where the money's at and all, this is it. I mean, it's in the numbers. It sucks, right? It's, but if you've been gaming for as long as I have, but it's just the reality of things nowadays. And, why we keep seeing a lot of these companies just try to chase this kind of game, because that's ultimately where they can probably get them. I mean, obviously, right, when it seems like where they can get the most profit from. And I don't think that, I really doubt that some of these games were really expensive to make in comparison to some of the bigger AAA budget games, right, that we're used to, right? Like just taking this year, for example, like your Uncharted, right, or your Overwatch and whatnot. Because Overwatch actually, that was a kind of like a hero shooter, whatever they're called. So it's kind of in the veins of like, the kind of games that it's popular nowadays. But I don't know if maybe the sales figures on that one will count towards next year. I'm not sure, but either way, though, right? That just kind of shows, right, why we're at where we're at, basically. But for the top-rated game, so it was actually the top-rated one was a DLC for The Witcher 3. So The Witcher 3 Blood and Wine. So that ranked at 94 on Metacritic and 94% on Game Rankings. The next one was Persona 5 on the PlayStation 4 with 93 on Metacritic and 93.3 on Game Rankings. Inside was number 3 with 93 on Metacritic and 92.81 on Game Rankings. And number 4 was Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, being at 93 on Metacritic and 92.71 on Game Rankings. Let's see. Let's go down a bit here. So kind of so when because we got the Game Awards, right? The official, I guess what we know now is the official Game Awards. We don't have the Spike TV award, excuse me, anymore. So the Game of the Year was Overwatch. We'll get more into Overwatch here in a bit. But so that was kind of the dominant one when it came to Game of the Year. Some other notable ones, though, would have been like Dark Souls 3 or Uncharted 4 A Thief's End, right? But Overwatch really dominated this year as far as being the Game of the Year. Which, again, that's not the kind of game that I like, but, it was still fairly fresh. It was still really fresh at the time, right? So I can understand, given the popularity of these kind of games, right, as to why it was considered Game of the Year this year. But for events here, let's see. Oh my gosh, there's quite a bit of stuff. All right, so let's get into this here. So for events, so January 4th, so Activision Blizzard announced that they had acquired Major League Gaming. January 5th, the Mixer streaming service is launched as Beam. January 6th, Square Enix closed cloud video game subsidiary Shinra Technologies. Yeah, fuck Shinra. January 8th, I'm sorry, I should have probably said that. There's probably a lot of good people there that unfortunately might have got laid off, so my bad. Sorry. I meant Shinra, Shinra from fucking Final Fantasy VII, Heidegger and Scarlet and all those, Rufus and all those fucks. I've been playing Final Fantasy VII, recently, and also just kind of, remember how much of assholes they were. Anyways, January 8th, Mark Laidlaw, lead writer of the Half-Life series, retired from Valve. January 8th, David Brevik, the CEO of Gazillion Entertainment, left the company. January 12th, Electronic Arts introduced Origin Access, a new subscription service for Windows. January 13th, Leslie Benzies, producer and president of Rockstar, left the company after a 16-month sabbatical. His positions were taken up by Aaron Garbert and Rob Nelson. Oh, okay, so he left the company. I didn't know that. January 16th, Brian Horton, director of Rise of the Tomb Raider, left Crystal Dynamics for Infinity Ward. January 22nd, so David Gator, lead writer of Dragon Age, left BioWare. I wonder if maybe that's why the more recent Dragon Age games sucked. Well, I'm sure we'll get into that when we talk about, 2024, 25 or so. Let's see. January 28th, Bungie announced that Pete Parsons has replaced Harold Ryan as the company's president. January 28th, GOG.com launched Games in Development, their own early access program. January 28th, Sumo Digital announced their plan of reestablishing a new studio in Nottingham. January 29th through the 31st, PAX South 2016 held at the Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center. February 8th, Blizzard Entertainment celebrated its 25th anniversary. February 8th, Game Trailers video game website was closed. I used to watch a lot of game trailers on that, so that's unfortunate. But February 15th, rapper Lupe Fiasco and esports player Dago Umemaro have an exhibition match of Street Fighter V to promote the game. February 16th through the 18th, the Academy of Interactive Arts and Science hosted the 2016 DICE Summit and 19th Annual DICE Awards at Mandalay Bay Convention Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. Hideo Kojima inducted into the AIAS Hall of Fame, and Satoru Iwata received a Lifetime Achievement Award. Oh, that's cool. He got a post-modus, am I saying that right, award? After they've passed and they receive an award. That's cool. Let's see. So February 27th, the Pokemon franchise celebrated its 20th anniversary. It just says February here. So Ryan Barnard, the game director of Tom Clancy's The Division, left Massive Entertainment for IO Interactive. March 7th, Press Play, the developer of Max, The Curse of Brotherhood, and Kalimba, was closed by Microsoft Studios. March 9th, Nexon acquired Big Huge Games, the developer of Dominations. March 9th, Riot Games acquired Radiant Entertainment, the developer of Rising Thunder. March 14th to the 18th, Game Developers Conference 2016 is held in San Francisco, California. March 15th, Jagex was acquired by Chinese mining company Shandong Honda. March 22nd, Big Point Games was acquired by Yuzu Entertainment or Interactive. March 22nd, this one sucks. Evolution Studios, the developer of MotorStorm and Drive Club, was shut down by Sony Computer Entertainment. I was just actually thinking about it because was it last year or last year, but last week's episode based on last year that I talked about Drive Club, I think, about this. So basically, again, they were the developers of the MotorStorm games, which I had raved about in previous episodes too, that I thought was really good. And I thought they were really great at making racing games. And I was actually just kind of in my mind, I was thinking about it last week where I was like, I wonder whatever happened to that company. Well, here you go. I didn't know that, or maybe I just forgot that Sony shut them down, which is unfortunate. And I think a lot of that had to do with Drive Club, because I remember that game being really hyped up, but ultimately was a bit of a letdown. It's not a bad game. I just think it was a bit of a letdown to the expectations of it. So fortunately, the way the business goes. March 22nd, the Resident Evil franchise celebrated its 20th anniversary. And holy shit, we're celebrating now its 30th anniversary. On that note, if you haven't already, I'd check out Resident Evil Requiem. It's not a bad game. March 24th, Sony Computer Entertainment announced that they had founded a new studio, Forward Works, to develop mobile games. March 31st, In Space, the developer of Sword Coast Legends, was closed. March 31st, Sega completed its acquisition of Atlas. Future Atlas-developed titles localized for America will be published by Sega. So this was a pretty big deal for Sega, right? Because this was, a lot of like RPGs that were published by Atlas and all were already starting to get a lot of like popularity, specifically with the Persona games, which we'll touch base on, I think, this year, right, on one of the specific Persona games. And so this, I'm sure, was a pretty lucrative deal for Sega. So April 5th, Karthik and Guha Bala, founders of Rikis Vision, left the company. April 11th, Codemasters announced the company had employed the majority of Evolution. Oh, okay, so looks like they absorbed a lot of those employees, which is good. Okay, because yeah. And so, because Codemasters, I think they're still doing like racing games too. Let's see, April 14th, so Leonard Boyarsky left Blizzard Entertainment to join Obsidian Entertainment. April 18th, GameStop announced Game Trust, a new publishing division. April 20th, Microsoft announced the discontinuation of the production of Xbox One. Wait, what? I wonder if they mean the 360. Okay. Well, anyways, let's see. April 22nd, Tatsuya Minami, president of Platinum Games, left the company. April 22nd to the 24th, PAX East 2016 is held at the Boston Convention and Exhibition Center. April 25th, Patrice Desilets gained back the rights to 1666 Amsterdam and settled the lawsuit with Ubisoft. April 26th, NIS America announced that they had cut ties with Atlas after Sega's acquisition of Atlas. April 26th, SNK Playmore was restructured to form SNK. April 29th, Lionhead Studios was closed by Microsoft Studios. So Lionhead, I believe, they were the dudes behind the Fable, right? May 10th, Avalanche Software was shut down by parent company Disney Interactive Studios. Disney decided they would not self-publish any titles in the future and instead rely on external partners. May 13th, Yahoo Games was shut down by Yahoo. May 18th, Electronic Arts announced that they've had formed a new studio called Frostbite Lab. May 18th, the creator of the Madden NFL series, Rich Hilleman, left Electronic Arts. Wow, he was there for a while. May 18th, IGN purchased assets of game trailers from Defy Media. May 30th, Starbreeze Studios acquired by Payday franchise from 505 Games. June 1st, the Vivendi succeeded in Gameloft's hostile takeover, seizing control from the Guillemot brothers. June 2nd, Techland established a new publishing label called Techland Publishing. June 3rd, Aaron Lynn, the writer of Battleborn, left Gearbox Software. June 6th, Future Publishing purchased Imagine Publishing, the owner of Games TM. June 10th, Ubisoft Casablanca was shut down by Ubisoft. June 12th to the 14th, so Electronic Arts held their own their first fan-oriented public event named EA Play. June 14th to the 16th, E3 2016 was held at the Los Angeles Convention Center. June 21st, Supercell, the developer of Clash of Clans, was acquired by Tencent for $8.6 billion. June 21st, the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise celebrated its 25th anniversary. July 1st, Josh Mosquera, the director of Diablo 3, announced that he had left Blizzard Entertainment. July 5th, Sega announced that they had acquired Endless Space developer Amplitude Studios. July 8th, Anna Boyes, VP of Third-Party Relations and Developer Technology Group of Sony Interactive Entertainment, departed from the company. July 8th, Splash Damage, the developer of the two Enemy Territory games, was acquired by Chinese chicken meat company Leiyu. July 19th, Dino Patti, co-founder of Playdead, departed the company. August 3rd to the 13th, the International 2016, the second highest paying esports tournament in history, was held at the Key Arena in Seattle. August 4th through the 7th, QuakeCon 2016 was held at the Hilton Anatolia in Dallas. August 5th, Relentless Software, the developer of the Buzz series, was shut down. August 12th, Nordic Games, the company that acquired most THQ's franchises, rebranded to THQ Nordic. Game Developers Conference Europe 2016 was held in Cologne, Germany. And then August 15th through the 17th through the 21st, Gamescom 2016 was held in Cologne, Germany. August 21st, Shinzo Abe appears at the 2016 Summer Olympics closing ceremony out of a warp pipe while wearing Mario's hat to promote the 2020 Summer Olympics. That's funny. And let's see, August 29th, independent developer Renegade Kid was replaced by two companies. Atui, who owns all of Renegade Kid's 2D IPs, and Infinitesimal, which owns all of Renegade Kid's 3D IPs. Interesting. September 2nd through the 5th, PAX West 2016 is held in Washington State Convention Center. September 9th, Crash Bandicoot celebrated its 20th anniversary. September 13th, Microsoft Studios launched Xbox Play Anywhere, a cross-program between Windows 10 and Xbox One. So that started way back then. September 13th, Chris Metzen announced his departure from Blizzard Entertainment. September 15th through the 18th, Tokyo Game Show was held and celebrated its 20th anniversary. September 21st, Blizzard Entertainment announced that they would be phasing out their online system, Battle.net. September 28th, Ubisoft acquired Ketchup, the developer of 2048. October 12th to the 13th, Steam Dev Days held in Seattle, Washington. October 17th, United Front Games, the developer of Sleeping Dogs, was shut down. Yeah, because I think they were working on a sequel to Sleeping Dogs or something to that effect, but ultimately, yeah, shut down. Sleeping Dogs, I think we talked about that on the episode for 2012. That's a great game. I really enjoyed that game. By October 20th, Nintendo publicly announces its next home console, the Switch. We'll talk more about that next year. But August 21st, the Screen Actors Guild American Federation of Television and Radio Artists begins a strike against 11 American video game developers and publishers over payments of residuals to voice and motion capture artists in video games. October 25th, the Tomb Raider franchise celebrates its 20th anniversary. November 4th through the 5th, BlizzCon 2016 is held in Anaheim, California. December 1st, Annapurna Pictures established the video game division Annapurna Interactive. December 1st, the Game Awards 2016 is held in Los Angeles, California. December 3rd to the 4th, the PlayStation Experience 2016 is held in Anaheim, California. December 16th, Shinji Hirano, the former president of Konami Europe, becomes the CEO of Kojima Productions. Ooh, some bad blood there still from Konami and Hideo Kojima and all. looks like this. He ended so the former president of that's crazy. But anyway, December 20th, Atlas formed a new development studio called Studio Zero. And December 20th, Crytek closed its studios in Bulgaria, Hungary, Turkey, South Korea, and China. All right, that was a lot of stuff there. So some deaths that happened this year. So February 3rd, Joe Alaskis, he was 63, and he's the voice actor known for the Bugs Bunny and others in the Looney Tune franchise. March 17th, Larry Drake, 67, voice actor known for the voice of Kazdan Paradas in the Star Wars The Force Unleashed. June 3rd, the great Muhammad Ali, he was 74, boxer who appeared in Muhammad Ali Heavyweight Boxing, Foes of Ali, Knockout Kings, UFC 5, and WWE 2K24, and just an amazing boxer from back in the day. June 10th, Christina Grimmie, she was 22, music YouTuber known as Zelda X Love 64 and host of Disney.com's gaming show Power Up. Grimmie also appeared in the commercial for the Kinect. Wow, she was young. Huh. Well, rest in peace to all of them. All right, so from some hardware releases, so we had some stuff that came out this year. But like I mentioned earlier on this thing, a lot of this was like revisions, right, of previous games, or like VR stuff. So on March 28th, the Oculus Rift CV1 came out worldwide. March 30th, the Microsoft HoloLens came out. October 5th, HTC Vive, I'm not sure what that is, or Vive, came out worldwide. October 2nd, the Xbox One S came out worldwide, and basically the Xbox One S is just like a more slimmer version of the Xbox One. Maybe that's what it meant earlier, that they phased out the Xbox One and they just had the Xbox One Slim, but I don't know, that doesn't seem right. Anyway, but then also PlayStation got theirs on September 15th with the PlayStation 4 Slim. And then October 13th, we got the PlayStation VR. So they were trying to push VR right around this time. And then November 10th, we got a few things. We got the Google Daydream, whatever the hell that is. And then the NES Classic Edition. This is when we started getting like those little mini consoles, right? It's a cool idea, right? You get a small little console. That's pretty cool. But I think Neo Geo, with what we talked about earlier, right? I think they're kind of getting one up on that. I'm wondering if Sega or Nintendo might follow suit, right? And I'll maybe try to release like an actual hardware, right? Like Neo Geo is. But either way, though, that NES Classic Edition was pretty cool, though. It was really hard to get, though, for people back in the day. I never got one. I've emulated so much and have a bunch of different devices that I kind of didn't see the need for one. But it's a cool novelty item, though, for sure. But then also on November 10th, though, we got the PlayStation 4 Pro. And so let's talk a bit about this here, the PlayStation 4 Pro. I was a little disappointed in this here for a few reasons, but let's just kind of go over the PlayStation 4 Pro here and what it is. So basically the PlayStation 4 Pro, so it was codenamed Neo, and its model number CHU 7000. It was announced in September 7th, 2016 and launched worldwide on November 10th, 2016. And it is an upgraded version of the PlayStation 4 with improved hardware to enable 4K rendering and improved PlayStation VR performance, including an upgraded GPU with 4.2 teraflops of processing power and hardware support for checkerboard rendering and a higher CPU clock. As with PlayStation 4 Slim, this model also featured support for USB 3.1, Bluetooth 4.0, and 5.0 gigahertz of Wi-Fi. The PlayStation 4 Pro also includes 1 gigabyte of DDR3 memory that is used to swap out non-gaming applications that runs in the background, allowing games to utilize an additional 512 megabytes of the console's GDDR5 memory, whatever the hell all that means. But although capable of streaming 4K video, the PlayStation 4 Pro does not support Ultra HD Blu-ray, which I remember was a bit of a bummer. The Pro model has a release price of $399 North American, 399 euros in Europe, and 349 pounds, I think it's called in UK. Got it right. Pounds, right? I think. I should know this. But games marketed by Sony as PlayStation 4 Pro Enhanced have specific optimization when played on this model, such as 4K resolution or higher performance. For games not specifically optimized, an option mode known as Boost Mode was added on software 4.5, which can enable to force higher CPU and GPU clock rates to possibly improve performance. So rendering games at 4K resolution is achieved through various rendering techniques and hardware features. PlayStation technical chief Mark Cerny explained that Sony could not brute force 4K without compromising form factor and cost, so the console was designed to support streamlined rendering techniques using custom hardware, best-in-breed temporal and spatial anti-aliasing algorithms, and many new features from the AMD Polaris architecture, as well as several even beyond it. The most prominent technique used in checkerboard rendering, wherein the console only renders portions of a scene using a checkerboard pattern, and then uses algorithms to fill in the non-rendered segments. The checkerboard screen can be smoothed using an anti-aliasing filter. Herman Holst of Guerrilla Games explained that the PlayStation 4 Pro could render something perceptibly so close to 4K that you couldn't see the difference. So the PlayStation 4 Pro supports remote play, share play, and streaming up to 1080p resolution at 60 frames per second, as well as capturing screenshots at 2160p and 1080p videos at 30 frames per second. In late 2017, Sony issued a new PS4 Pro model, model number CHU-7100, that featured updated internal components. The actual hardware specification and performance remained the same as the original model, although it was found that the revised console had slightly quieter fan profile than the original. As a result, was operating at a slightly higher temperature under load than the CHU-7000. In October 2018, Sony quietly issued another revision, model number CHU-7200, initially as part of Red Dead Redemption 2's hardware bundles. The revision had a different power supply, which uses the same type of power cord as the Slim model, and was shown to have further improvements to acoustics. So my little experience with the PlayStation 4 Pro, again, I've always been kind of a nut, right, as far as to try to play my games as best possible on the best possible TV and all, right? I just enjoy that stuff. So I guess you could say I'm kind of a part of that enthusiast crowd, right, to an extent. So for example, I got the PlayStation 5 Pro also, right? But I guess I thought that at the time it was going to be much more of a difference, right? I was expecting, I say this not really understanding, right, like how this technology is and all that, right? So this is coming from a true casual, right, as far as like a hardcore video game fan, but a bit of a novice when it comes to like understanding like the hardware and whatnot and what is possible and sort of. But basically, I kind of looked at like the PlayStation. I guess I was expecting the PlayStation 4 Pro to provide the performances of something like we were seeing with the PlayStation 5. I might even go up a little step up in what the PlayStation 5 Pro is doing. Because like I said before, right, the graphic quality from the 4 to the 5, really didn't change too much. And so, now when I'm seeing some games on the PlayStation 5 Pro with the improved resolution and frame rates, I'm like, oh, okay, there it is, right? Where before I remember playing some games on the PlayStation 4 Pro and I'm like, and that's because I had a 4K TV at the time and it had HDR and all, and it was a Samsung TV. So it was a decent TV for the time. But I remember I was like, I don't really see the difference. And because you weren't really seeing like a lot of bump up in frame rate. A lot of it was like 4K. Because I remember like some of the games that were being shown that were really good, right? Was like Horizon Zero Dawn. And I remember playing that game. I'm like, I don't really see a difference. Or like Uncharted also, right? And I was like, I still don't see a difference. And but again, in my mind, I think I was expecting that I was going to get like 60 frames per second and all. We didn't get that with Uncharted until the PlayStation 5. And so anyways, I was a bit disappointed with it and all. I just kind of felt like, I was like, well, I don't know, maybe because it started, but again, right, that's where I was kind of thinking, I was like, maybe I'm the one that's probably being a bit unrealistic. I just have to accept the fact that this is really diminishing returns. We're not getting like that big bump up in graphics and all the way I thought I would be seeing, at the very least, with a really noticeable increase in resolution and in frame rates. Again, so a lot of people were talking about right at the time, right, that the resolution looks so much better and all. I couldn't really see that big of a difference, maybe slightly, but not too much, to the point. I remember I was a bit disappointed that I got the PlayStation 4 Pro. And not only that, it was loud as fuck. Like that system was loud. And so I must have gotten like the earlier model, because I remember I bought it a little bit after it launched. And it got to the point where I had I remember I cleaned it and all, and then I used to like pop off the top part of the lid on the console, right, just to kind of quiet it down a little bit. But ultimately, My understanding afterwards was that because I gave the PlayStation 4 Pro to my brother when I got the PlayStation 5, and so he messaged me one time that I guess him and a buddy of his who's a big techie, I guess, they were able to mod the system and all. Where this somehow they fixed it. I don't know what exactly they did, but then I remember my brother telling me he's like, "Oh yeah, it's a lot quieter now." So it sounds like there was ways to fix it. It's just that out of the box and all that, yeah, it was going to be loud. And I mean, I remember. And this was because my daughter was born in 2018, and so the first year or two or so, right? You're trying to be quiet and all if you're playing games while the baby's going to sleep, and so there was times where because I had a headset at the time, I think, but then I remember it broke. And so then I would just try to play games in the living room, right, with the volume kind of low, but I could not hear anything just because the damn thing sounded like a jet engine. And I remember there was times where my wife would come out of the room and, she's like, "What is that?" I was like, "It's a damn PlayStation 4 Pro that sounds like it's going to, just take off from the living room and fly away to, the apparently up in the sky or something." Again, maybe a lot of people saw a lot of worth in the PlayStation 4 Pro. I didn't really too much. And again, it was when the games really started, like the more modern games, right? So, because and again, this goes into later years, right? But like the Red Dead Redemption. No, wait. I got Red Dead Redemption on the Xbox, so never mind on that. But like, I remember, like The Last of Us, Part 2, Uncharted 4, Horizon Zero Dawn, Final Fantasy VII Remake. Those were all games that I was trying to play at that time. God of War also, and Spider-Man. All games that I was trying to play right during this, after I got the PlayStation 4 Pro to try to take advantage of it. And it was just annoying because I either had to have the headset on, and again, that was kind of partly my fault that my headset broke, right? And I just didn't want to shell out for another headset at that time. But it was just hard to play because I could only really play it during the daytime where I could turn it up loud just because I couldn't hear otherwise, right, what was coming out, the sound that was coming out, right, from my speakers. But anyways, just my little spiel on the PlayStation 4 Pro. It seemed like it sold fairly decently for Sony, given what it is, right, as just kind of like an enthusiast sort of system, right? And all obviously it's not going to overtake the sales of the base PS4 Pro. I'm sorry, the base PS4. But that was just sort of my thought on it. I'm kind of having similar thoughts also about the PlayStation 5, even though this new update that they did is kind of cool though. But anyway, I'll talk more about that when it comes. So I'm just kind of complaining, but not really complaining on it, I guess, because it still provided me a lot of hours of gameplay, so I can't hate it for that either. All right, but anyways, let's go back here, and so let's talk about games that came out this year, the games of 2016. So again, not the most memorable year, but certainly not a bad year. So starting with handhelds, and I'm really only talking about the 3DS here. I really wasn't paying too much attention to what came out on the Vita, but two games I guess that were kind of standouts on the 3DS, maybe for better or worse, I guess. But the first one was Metroid Prime Federation Forces. I don't know much about this game. I think it's like some kind of a multiplayer game. You don't even play Samus, to my understanding. You play part of the Federation Forces, which they make some appearances in some other Metroid games. I just know that from what it sounds like, it's not a bad game for what it is, like to being some kind of like a multiplayer first-person shooter of some sort on a handheld. But it's just, it's just not what you would expect from a Metroid game. And I think that was a big part of the disappointment with it. But we got also Dragon Quest VII, Fragments of the Forgotten Past. And so it's funny because it's been 10 years now, right? Because we recently got the Dragon Quest VII Reimagined this year. But this one here, so it was based off of the PlayStation version that came out originally, well, in the United States anyways, in 2000, I think. And it streamlined some things because the PlayStation version is known to be really long and has a lot of extra padding in it. My understanding of this version here is that they streamlined it a little bit more, especially in the introduction area. I've only played about 2 hours into this game, and I remember a big part of that I was just kind of grinding a little bit after you get over the little story segment at the start. So I'm not too familiar with this one. I've been kind of holding back on it because at first I was going to play this one, but now with the reimagined version that came out recently, that's the one I'll probably jump into. I mean, it seems like a cool game. All the Dragon Quest games seem pretty cool. But hopefully, I'm still kind of working my way through the Dragon Quest 1 HD 2D remake one. But eventually, I'm sure I'll get into this one here. My goal is to go through all the Dragon Quest games. Because as of right now, I've beaten part 1 and 2. excuse me, but I played those like on the one that came out on the Switch some years ago. And so technically I've beaten those games, but I'm going through the HD 2D remake ones now. So for 1, 2, and 3, because those are really well done. They're so much better. Excuse me. And then let's see. I've beaten. I played it. I've played quite a ways into part 4. I haven't beaten it though. I played a bit of part 5, but I fell back on part 5 because I'm like, oh, this one seems really good. I wanna really take my time with this one when I'm not really playing anything else. So been holding off on that one there. Part 6, I've started it up a little bit, and it seems cool. Like the little bit that I've played of it, but which has only been like about 45 minutes. But my understanding is one of the lesser favorite ones. Part 7, kind of, like I just said earlier, I played a little bit of it. Part 8, I've beaten twice now. Once on the PlayStation 2 and once on the 3DS. Absolutely love that game. My favorite Dragon Quest game. One of my favorite games of all time, actually. I really love Part 8. Part 9, I've played a little bit of it. And then, Part 10, haven't played that because, it's the multiplayer one. And then Part 11, I've got a little ways into that one as well, too. But yeah, great series, though. My goal is to play through all of them outside of Part 10, though. All right, let's go into the multi-platform games, though. There's some pretty cool stuff that came out this year. I've had some experience with some of them, but not all of them. So there was a Pokemon Go. And Pokemon Go was kind of a big deal, huh? Is this still? I think it's still going, right? I mean, let's read up a little bit on Pokemon Go. So it was a 2016 augmented reality mobile game developed and published by Niantic in partnership with Nintendo and the Pokemon Company for iOS and Android devices. The game uses GPS to locate, capture, train, and battle Pokemon. It is a free-to-play featuring a freemium model that includes local advertising and offers in-app purchases for additional in-game items. Pokemon Go launched with approximately 150 Pokemon species, with new species introduced. Upon its release, Pokemon Go received mixed or average reviews. Critics found the experience enjoyable, but noted several technical issues. Despite this, it became one of the most popular and profitable mobile apps of 2016, amassing over 500 million downloads worldwide. The game is credited with popularizing location-based and AR technology, encouraging physical activity and social interaction. However, it has also faced criticism for causing accidents and public disturbances. Some governments raised security concerns and imposed regulations on its use. As of May 2018, Pokemon Go had over 147 million monthly active users and has been downloaded more than 1 billion times worldwide by early 2019. By 2020, the game had generated over $6 billion in revenue. It is considered among the best mobile games of all time. In 2025, Scope Play acquired the game as part of a $3.5 billion purchase of Niantic's gaming division. So long story short, if you have no idea what this is for some reason, right? It's so somehow you get on your phone and then it shows you locations where you can find a Pokemon in real time in the real world. So like, for example, you can go to your local park, right? And there might just be one right there, depending on what it shows you on the GPS on your phone. And so then you get there and then you get like a little animation of like the actual the Pokemon. For Pokemon, as popular as it is and as big of a nerd as I am, I don't really understand Pokemon, but the little Pokemon, little monster thing comes out, right, and you're supposed to capture it, right? You throw like those balls at it and it captures it somehow. So, it was interesting, right? It's kind of like, Pokemon in real life, though. So, I mean, I can definitely see why it took off. I'm sure that with the technology behind it probably had a bunch of technological glitches, along with, like they said, right, being public as disturbances, because, like, for example, you can be at a restaurant or whatever. I remember hearing stories of this back then, and then you see like all these kids running in, right, and all with their phones trying to capture the Pokemon, and it was like, it's like, oh my god. It's a cool concept though for what it is, I guess. I just remember it was a big craze at that time, and then it kind of seemed to, at least in the public spotlight, where it fell off a bit, but obviously it was still popular, and it seems like still to be popular to this day. But it was kind of an interesting sort of a phenomenon that happened there in video game. And at least in that year, in 2016, it was just, I just remember hearing a lot about it. I've never tried it myself, but, sounds like it was fun for a lot of people. But we had some pretty cool like story-based games, like or walking simulators. One was Gone Home. This game, I believe it came out in PC though in 2013, but it came out this year on console for the PlayStation 4, maybe the Xbox. I'm not sure, but so Gone Home, I remember reading about it and that it was a pretty cool story-based game. Not a lot of gameplay into it. Not like it's not action-based or anything, but the concept is that you're this girl that comes back from college, I believe, and she comes back home, but then like her family's not there. Uh, oh my god, excuse me. Sorry if you had to hear that. I was trying to pause it on my little recording app here, but I didn't get to it in time. My bad. God, I'm getting like allergies or what the hell's happening to me right now. But anyways, but Gone Home. So you come home and then everyone's gone though, and it's like during the nighttime, so you're exploring your house, and so there's a bit of a mystery as far as to what happens to everyone. It's a very grounded story. All right, I caught it that time where I paused it before I sneezed. But it's a pretty grounded story, and it's definitely interesting. It's captivating, and I remember at the time, yeah, I played it with my wife as her and I had just kind of hooked up, and so I just told her I was like, hey, she's into like a lot of like mystery thrillers and scary stuff and all. I was like, hey, you want to check out this game? It's kind of like a scary story of some sort. I was like, I wasn't quite sure what it was at the time, right? And also so she watched me play through it and all, because doesn't take that long, like maybe 2 hours or so to be. And she actually thought it was interesting, right, for what it was, as she was just watching me play it. So it's the concept is cool. I the payoff in it and all was a little underwhelming, but it was still interesting though, right? And it's like I said, it's a very grounded game. It's something that's like a real life scenario almost, right? So I'll leave it at that without spoiling much. But it's pretty cool though. It'll keep you interested. And then there was a Firewatch also. So kind of the same, where it's a story that's very grounded in reality in a lot of ways. The graphics, both of these games are like first person. The graphics are a little cartoony on them and all right, but the story, it's very grounded. I mean, the acting on both of them is really well done. But this Firewatch game, so you play this employee that you get hired on to be a Firewatch person, where you go around in a forest, right, and all. You have like this tower that you can go up on and sleep in and all, and you're just checking forward to make sure that there's no fires going on out there. And so interesting setup, right? And so ultimately there's a bit of a mystery going on, and so this game does a really good job of keeping you hooked on that mystery there. And again, the acting is really well done, the script is really well written, the characters are very likable. It's definitely something that is really grounded in reality, and so I appreciated it for that. It's a fun little adventure, right, and all that. You get, again, not a lot of gameplay. It's just basically like a walking simulator. But if you want something that's like story based and all, I definitely recommend these two games. I think they're pretty cool. And then we also had so Telltale Games. So they were the ones that had done, I've talked about them before, the Walking Dead series, and then also the Wolf Among Us. Well, they did a Batman game, and so I thought this was pretty cool, right? I remember when they announced it, I was like, oh wow, a Batman game? This is going to be cool. And with Troy Baker playing Bruce Wayne and Batman, I was like, okay, you have my attention. And it's pretty cool. It's kind of like The Walking Dead, same thing, right? It has limited gameplay, which is basically like QTE sections, and just kind of point and click on stuff and all. But it's 5 episodes. It's pretty cool, and it takes some liberties with the Batman overall lore and all. But I appreciated it though for that. And I mean, as a Batman fan, I had a lot of fun with it. It's not my favorite Batman story, but it's cool though. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was overall a good experience, and has kind of the same graphical style as like the games on the the Walking Dead and all. So I would say if you're a fan of Batman and you're a fan of these story-based games, you should definitely check this one out. I think it's interesting. There would be a season 2 that would come out later, which is also really good. The first one came out this year though. And then we had one of those cinematic platformers, Inside. So this is from, I believe, the same developers that did Limbo, which came out a few years ago. And it's kind of the same, where the main thing about it is that it's a platforming game with puzzle elements to it. has a cool art style to it. It's very cinematic, and it's very engaging. Just the overall story, and again, a lot of the puzzles that you get to solve in it. Yeah, just a cool overall game. Very interesting story. Very unique and very original. And so, if you like these cinematic platformers, this is definitely amongst one of the better ones. It's really good. It's eventually got ported to pretty much everything, I believe. Because I think it came out first on the Xbox, or I don't know, but I have it on the Switch. So it's excuse me, it's available on pretty much everything. Yeah, but good game though. We had Far Cry Primal, which I don't really know much about this game. I remember it, like I think you're back in like in the BC era. I don't know, like with dinosaurs, obviously, right? Given the name, but yeah, I don't know much about this one other than that it's another game in the Far Cry series. But we had Deus Ex: Mankind Divided. I played a little bit of this one, I think on a demo somewhere. I know I played it a little bit, and I tried it out because I really like the Deus Ex Human Revolution, I think is what it's called. That's the one that I actually played all the way through MB. And this one, though, a little bit that I played of it, it seems okay. I think it was criticized back then for it having like I don't know if it's microtransactions or what, but there's some controversy to it where ultimately I think it has to do with that is it's just not a very complete game is my understanding of it. But the overall concept of it, though, of these games, right, and all seems pretty cool. So I don't know, maybe one day I'll give this one a shot. But we had Tom Clancy's The Division. So this is it was a fairly popular game. Again, it was kind of one of those I don't know, whatever you call them, like online multiplayer PvE, PvP, or whatever, right, kind of game. And this one was fairly popular. I know there was a lot of hype behind it. I think it had a bit of a rocky start, but eventually it got pretty popular. And I think, was there a sequel to it? I'm sure if there was, we'll talk about it some year later. But yeah, but that was my understanding of it, is that it was a pretty popular game for, being like a multiplayer game and all. Just a bit of a excuse me, a bit of a letdown though and all, because I think it was one of those games that promised a lot that didn't fully deliver on its promise, or something to that effect. I just remember there being a lot of controversy with it. But in somewhat similar style of game, right, as far as like playing online and whatnot and multiplayer and all, was Overwatch. And so this is from Activision Blizzard, I believe. And so this was pretty much across the board was a game of the year. And it was showing a bit of a shift, right, in just what people were expecting for video games. As it was called like a hero shooter, where you have like these fictional characters that are, very they have their colorful personalities and designs and all. You go around the map just shooting each other, a bunch of different play modes, and it was hugely popular. Again, I've never played this one, so I really don't know a whole lot about it, but it definitely started popularizing this kind of game. And I feel that between like stuff like this, The Division and all, and eventually is what led to other stuff that we'll talk about in later years, like Fortnite, Players on the Ground, and a lot of the live service shooters that we get nowadays. I think this is kind of the start of it, and all was because of like these two games right here, Division and Overwatch. That's what I feel anyways, because it seems like we were just getting a bunch of stuff that we're trying to mimic that, in the years to come, right, to one way or form or another. So, it is what it is. It's just, again, it's not the kind of style of game that I like, but apparently a lot of people did, as I remember Overwatch being hugely popular at that time. But then we get to Dishonored 2. And so Dishonored had come out, I think, what was it, 2012, I believe that it came out. Never did get to play that one. And so and then I certainly didn't play this one either. They seem like cool games, kind of like stealth-based games, so I definitely would be interested in playing them. I just need to find the time to play them, and then I don't even know if I have access to them somewhere. But yeah, I mean, they're pretty cool stealth games. This one, I guess I don't know really what the reception is on this one, if it was like better or considered better or worse than the first one. But again, they're pretty cool games set in a sort of cyberpunk sort of setting, and from what it sounds like, right, and all, just overall a pretty cool stealth game. But Watch Dogs 2 got a sequel, and Again, I don't know much about this one. I want to say that I think the reception on it was that it was considered a little bit better than the first. I'm not sure, but it came out this year here. Titanfall 2, though, this was an excellent game. So the first Titanfall game, we talked about it a few episodes back. That was mostly like a multiplayer game also. This one here, it has a single player mode along with, having its multiplayer. And it was, so because Titanfall, so it's developed by Respawn Entertainment, I believe, and then I believe that some of the creators from Infinity Ward that had done some of the better Call of Duty games went over to this. They formed this company, and then Titanfall, and I believe Titanfall 2 were some of their games that they came out on it. Titanfall 2 is excellent. You control you're a soldier, and then ultimately you gotta get in this kind of like a big old mech for some areas, right? And the first person shooting action is just really incredible. Amazing graphics, running at 60 frames per second, has the same snappy gameplay that the Call of Duty games have, only in a more sci-fi setting. Yeah, I mean, this is an excellent first-person shooter. There's one stage I remember where it's like you're going back and forth in time, and the way it jumps between the two time eras seamlessly was really cool. And I remember playing this, I was like, I am playing a really kick-ass first-person shooter game, like, no joke. Like, this game is awesome. But it went under the radar some, or, didn't sell that well because it was just coming out at a time where there was a bunch of other popular games. Like, I think, I could be wrong on the release dates, I'm not sure, but I want to say that I think this game came out around the time that, like, games like Overwatch and Doom 16 or 2016 came out, which I'll talk about that one here in a bit. And so it just got overlooked a lot. But really, if for some reason you haven't played this game, you can usually find it for pretty cheap. Titanfall 2 is an amazing first-person shooter if you're looking for like a single-player shooter, right? I don't know like if the online servers are still on if you wanted to play a multiplayer. But yeah, kick-ass game. I mean, I one of my favorite games of this year, actually. It's really that good. I fairly recently was playing it a little bit again to capture some footage on when I was doing my Xbox One episode a little while ago. And when I was playing it, I was like, yeah, I remember this game is really great. The weapons are cool. The controls feel right. When when you're fighting in your mech, it's really cool. The levels, like I said, right, are all really creative. You're not going to go wrong with this game. It's highly entertaining. And yeah, just I wish I had more recognition though. But we also had another entry into the Dark Souls series with Dark Souls 3. I've never played this one, so I don't know a whole lot about it. But from what I understand, when it comes to the Dark Souls games, so there's Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3. 1 and 3 seems to be the more popular ones. So, yeah, I mean, it seems like some people were slightly disappointed from part 2, from what I understand. This one seemed like it brought the series back on track for a lot of fans of it. More Dark Souls, right? So if you're into that kind of stuff and glutton for punishment, there you go. But then we had Persona 5. And so this game came out on the PlayStation 3 and then on the PlayStation 4. And I believe it actually came out. So it came out this year in Japan. And I believe it came out next year in North America. But I think it came out really late this year in Japan. So we'll just touch base a bit of it here. Now, this is the original version. Eventually got its Royale version. There's been some controversy with that where Atlas has come out saying, because they come out with a lot of like their updated versions, right? Like there was Persona 3 and then Persona 3 FES, Persona 4 and then Persona 4 Golden. And same thing, they kind of did the same thing with this one, right? Where Persona 5 and then a few years later, Persona 5 Royale. Sort of like felt a bit of a scam, right? They're kind of scamming your customers by, having players basically double dip, right, on your games. But Persona 5, though, I've been playing this a bit recently, the Royale version anyways, on the Switch, and it's good. I mean, I do like the concept of these Persona games. It's so basically, if you don't know anything about Persona for some reason, it's kind of like a high school simulator in a way where you're in Japan and you're going through high school and just kind of dealing with like a lot of high school drama stuff, which is actually pretty entertaining and more than what I'm making it sound right now. But then in the midst of all that, there's it's different in every game, but ultimately you end up in some kind of a alternate dimension, right? Where you have a persona or sort of like a spiritual entity of some sort, right? That helps you in battles. it's a very talky game. There's a lot of dialogue in it, but it's entertaining though. And the turn-based battle system in it and all, from what I've played, it's really fun. Again, the one that I'm playing came with a lot of new additions. I don't know the full extent of what else was added to it with the Royal version. But we'll talk more about that game, I'm sure, in the next few years. But the base game, though, was still pretty well done. It's from what I can tell, it seems to be the more higher rated, higher appreciated Persona game. And so, if you've been hearing about Persona games, because my understanding, they don't really follow each other. So this wouldn't be a bad place to start, as, it definitely seems to be amongst one of the better games in this series. And this is where it got its start here. But then we got another heavy hitter this year for multiplayers, and that was for Doom. And Doom is a game that I really want to love and play. Everything about it seems cool. I love the whole demon slaying, going to hell on Mars scenario. I like the first Doom from back in the day. The graphics are really incredible on it. It controls really well. Everything is great about it. Like, this is a game that I feel like I would absolutely love. I haven't beaten it, though, and I haven't really gone too far in it because for some reason, I'm usually pretty good about this, but for some reason, this game gives me crazy motion sickness, and I can't play it for more than a few minutes until I start feeling like I'm going to puke. I don't know what it is. I mean, I played games with a lot of fast frame rates because, the frame rate on this and the speed of the action and all is really quick. I mean, I've played numerous other games like that, but something about this one that just gives me crazy motion sickness. And I hate that because I really want to play this game. But literally, I've tried to play it several times. And literally, after about 20 minutes, I'm like, okay, I'm going to hurl. I need to stop playing this. So I don't know what it is. Maybe I'll try like one of the more later ones that came out. Yeah. But either way, it seems really cool. And so I guess lucky for those that don't get motion sickness. But then the Call of Duty game of the year was Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. And so this one was a bit controversial because we're going to the future now. And like in the distant future, where Advanced Warfare that came out, I believe we talked about it 2 years ago. That one was in the future, but not the too distant future. This one's like really going into the future. I mean, we're going to space in this one. And I played and beat the single player campaign. I liked it. I didn't think it was bad. I certainly liked it. It has the actor, the dude that plays Jon Snow, Kit Harington, I believe is the actor's name. He plays a role in this game. And I thought that some of the set pieces were pretty cool. It has cool action. For me personally, I didn't mind that it was in the future. Yeah, I mean, I had fun with the single player experience. I didn't hate it at all. Again, I don't do multiplayer on Call of Duty games, so I can't speak on that. But I had a fun time with it for what it was. I mean, I would say that if you are looking on picking this up, if you've never played it, maybe look for a sale because it's not that long of a campaign. And again, I don't know how, like if the servers are still open if you wanted to play a multiplayer. But for what it is, a quick, fun, action game. Sure, yeah, it was cool. I didn't mind it. But then we had Final Fantasy 15 this year. This game was in development for a long time, right? It was part of the whole Crystallis, whatever. Did I talk about that when I talked about Final Fantasy 13 some episodes back? I don't recall. But anyways, so there was Final Fantasy 13 that came out in 2010. And then there was going to be this other game too, Fabulous Crystallis 13 or something like that. There was going to be some kind of a spin-off, but set in the same universe is my understanding of it. Ultimately, it was stuck in development hell for one reason or the other, and so it didn't. And so eventually, it ended up getting converted over to be just another mainline entry, right? Final Fantasy 15. I remember when they showed off the trailer to it, like I think in 2014 or so. I forgot the year, but I was like, okay, this looks interesting. The characters are, kind of more like emo-ish, edgy, kind of this edgy but kind of realistic look. But I was like, okay, this is interesting. But the overall art design and all wasn't honestly hooking me too much. So I was already a bit concerned about this game. And so finally it came out this year, I think during the fall time. And ultimately the game sold pretty well because it was on the Xbox One also and on PC. And so the sales of this game, from what I understand, was amongst the higher selling Final Fantasy games, if you're looking at just strictly on sales, right, across the board. But it's open world. So like I've talked before, right? This generation was really popularized by a lot of open world games, a lot of them. And so Final Fantasy 16, or I'm sorry, 15 tried to continue on that trend there. And so the first area of the game, right, like because it's split up into chapters. So I would say the first several chapters, yeah, it's cool, right? It's cool. It's open world. It's kind of cool that you're walking around this big old vast area. And I remember thinking, I was like, God, I remember this is what I used to think, what like in my head as I'm going through an overworld map, like in Final Fantasy 4, 5, 6, 7. Only back then, right? You had like the big character on a. I mean, it looked very video gamey, obviously, right? Where you're going around an overworld map, but it was like if you're looking at it proportion wise and all, you would be like a giant, right? Running around the overworld there. Where this one, it was, it was like an actual open world map, right? And I thought that was cool, but it felt a little too realistic, though. I mean, the game obviously has a lot of fantasy elements, right? You got magic, you got this and all, but like the characters, the terrain and all. I remember looking at the terrain, I was like, God, that looks a lot like where I used to live at, and kind of the deserty kind of area. And so I was like, I don't know, it's getting they're trying to strive a little bit too much more in the realism, where I've always liked my Final Fantasy games to be more fantasy based, and I don't know, so I wasn't immediately hooked on it, but I kept playing it and playing it, and eventually I did start liking it. And one of the main things that kept me hooked on this game was the banter between the four friends. Noctis, Prompto, God, I forgot the other guy's names, the big buff dude and then the smart dude. And so it was pretty cool, right? I was like, okay, this is different, right? Usually there's a female character or several female characters in there. This is just all about the bros, And so I was like, okay, I can get behind that. But they're on a quest to go take Noctis, the prince, to his wedding. But then things get, sidetracked. Honestly, I don't really remember too much of the story past a certain point, because the first part of the game, like the first, I don't know, roughly half of the game or so, it's very much open world. You're doing quests, your way of transportation is through this car. And so again, it almost feels like you're on a road trip, right? So, it's a very interesting premise. And so that's cool and all. But then after that, I forget a lot of the game. I mean, I remember there was a pretty cool scene in a city in the kind of like out in the ocean, and it involved a summon spell. I thought that was pretty cool. But after that, though, I don't really recall a lot of it. And I beat the game, but it just, it's a pretty forgettable. And so, the gameplay was pretty fun, though. The combat was I don't know, I was a bit let down by it. It was more the open world exploration and the banter between the brothers that I thought was pretty cool. Everything else about it felt a little, I gotta say, a little mid when it comes to like other open world games of this style, right? Because it wasn't trying to be so much like your typical turn-based Final Fantasy game. It felt more like it was trying to do something like what The Witcher was doing or something to that effect, right? And so on that end there, it is a bit lackluster on that, right? Not a bad game. I enjoyed my time with it. I mean, I ended up beating it and all, but it is definitely one of the more forgettable Final Fantasy games for me. And so I remember at this point, I was like, okay, Final Fantasy 11. So Final Fantasy 10 for me was like the last really great Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 10 was amazing. Final Fantasy 11 was, multiplayer. Final Fantasy 12 was good. It wasn't bad, but I was already starting to feel like this feels a little different. Not just the gameplay and the structure of the game, it just felt different. And then Final Fantasy 13, amongst one of the worst ones, right? And not bad. Again, they're still good games. It's just, not quite to the standards of what Final Fantasy used to be. And then we got Final Fantasy 14, which I understand as far as multiplayer games go and all, seems like it's a really great time. Again, but it's a multiplayer game. But then, and then there's this one, and I was a bit disappointed by it. And I remember at this point thinking, Final Fantasy is not the same anymore. It's just not. And so I was a bit disappointed by that. And now last year, right, we talked about the reveal of Final Fantasy VII Remake, which, I was like floored, right, when I heard that. But after playing Final Fantasy 15, I remember being really concerned about Final Fantasy VII Remake. I was like, I don't know if they're going to be able to pull this off, because the last games that Square Enix has released for Final Fantasy, they have been a bit lackluster. Final Fantasy VII is known to have amazing characters and great world design and all, but if they're modernizing it and their modern games, their characters have been a bit, I don't want to say flat because, like, I mean, like I said, right, I really like the characters to Final Fantasy 15, like the banter that they have and all back and forth, but they just weren't quite as memorable, though, right, as some of the other Final Fantasy games. And so I was getting pretty concerned about Final Fantasy 7 remake, right? Yeah, but we'll get more into that game when it came out some years later. But yeah, Final Fantasy 15 in the end, not a bad game. I mean, the graphics are good, the music is great, the overall exploration is great, cool. You know, the very involving characters right in it. Like the main forecast of characters. Other like a lot of the side characters, I don't even really remember much of them. Cool world design and all, but the battle system's a bit lackluster. The magic system is really convoluted. I don't even think I really used magic in this game. I was like, that's kind of stupid the way you have to do it. I just opt to just not use it. So a bit disappointed by it, but not a bad game. I don't hate it, but amongst one of my less favorite Final Fantasy games. And I was definitely concerned on what was going to happen with the series going forward, you know, from here on out. But the Wii U was still alive and kicking, so let's talk a bit about some of the exclusives that came out on this one. So we had Star Fox Zero, and Star Fox is known to be a very controversial game. It's funny because I didn't really know why, though, right? I was actually fairly recently, I started watching like a documentary on YouTube about Star Fox games. And so they were talking about Star Fox Zero and how it was a bit of a disappointment and all. And I was like, well, yeah, why was that? I was like, because I don't remember why. Well, basically what it was is that they were really set on using the gamepad, right, to play the game, which, I mean, kind of makes sense. I mean, they made the Wii U to utilize the gamepad, but you basically control a lot of the control on this game is using the gamepad and the gyroscope on it. It's my understanding, and it doesn't really work that well though. But they were kind of stubborn about it, where that's how they wanted you to play the game. And so for that, it got a lot of flack for it. The hope was that they were going to release some kind of a patch that you could just use standard controls on it. But to what I understand, that never ended up happening. And so you have a game that is just, you know, you're forced to play with this gamepad, which is not very fun. I mean, the game looks pretty cool overall. Otherwise, it's just because of its control scheme is what sets it back, is kind of what I understand. I actually recently, quote unquote, got the game on the Wii U. But so maybe I'll try it out one of these days and see what it's all about, maybe to kind of get me prepared for this supposed Star Fox game that's coming out soon, which actually, damn, we're already past mid-April and supposedly it's going to get announced in April. Anyways, but yeah, we'll check it out though and see what it's all about. But the other one that came out that I think was, you know, worth noting for the Wii U, and it's a remaster of a game, but it's for the Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess HD. And so this is one that I've really been interested in playing, this version here, because I absolutely love the original one. It's like the Zelda game that I really wanted, that was still kind of mature like the Ocarina of Time, but with more modernish sort of graphics. And so this one, I mean, it's finally in HD, although it looks nice in HD and all, but because of its graphical style, some things aren't going to look quite as maybe as impressive as like the Wind Waker, because the Wind Waker just had more of a style that basically aged better, right? But Twilight Princess is by no means a bad game. It's just that you really have to put yourself in a mindset that this is 6th generation graphics, right? That isn't trying to do like a fancy art style. It's just 6th generation graphics that's trying to mimic a more realistic but still kind of anime style, right? As opposed to like having a very stylized cell shaded look, if that makes any sense. But it still looks nice though for what it is. My understanding though that this version has a few glitches though here and there, and so I remember watching a video about that. That's something to do with the music, like the way it plays in the background is a bit off. There's a few other things too that I forgot, so maybe I'll kind of rewatch that and all to see just how much of a nuisance some of the things in this game are. But either way, though, it looks pretty nice, and yeah, definitely a version. If assuming that they don't come out with a Switch port of some sort, this will be the next version I'll want to play of this game whenever I get around to playing it again. Because I beat the one on the GameCube and the one on the Wii, so this, if I ever played this game again, it would be this version here. But jumping over to the Xbox One, so this is the year that I did get the Xbox One, and I mainly got it because of Gears of War 4. when I got the Xbox One, there was some kind of a pack-in deal where you could get a free game, also like download a free game. And the one that I got was, I probably should have got a Forza game, but eventually I did go for Gears of War, the Ultimate Edition version, which is pretty cool overall. But I like, I mean, the graphics look better, but they lose a certain something to it, though. I think I like the art design more of the first Gears of War game. But either way, though, it's Gears of War. Pretty cool, right? Overall, I was a bit disappointed though that it only ran at 30 frames per second on this version here on the Xbox One. But anyways, but we had but I basically got Gears Xbox One because of Gears of War 4, which I'll talk about here in a bit. But prior to that though, we had Dead Rising 4, which continuing on from that zombie game where you have a bunch of zombies on screen and all. I only played part 1, beat part 1. I played some of part 2, never played part 3, and never played part 4. So I don't really honestly know what this game's about, other than you're just killing a bunch of zombies. But then there was Quantum Break. This was an Xbox exclusive. I don't know. I think it has to do something with like quantum physics. But I remember it was a bit of a hyped up game for the PlayStation, or I'm sorry, the Xbox One. I don't recall the reception of this game though, how well it was done though, but I know like it has like some crazy effects on it and all, and would be maybe an interesting game to check out right now if you're looking for an Xbox One exclusive, as there wasn't a whole lot of them, right? But this was one of them. But we had another entry into the Forza Horizon series, so Forza Horizon 3. And so this one, I want to say, let's just double check here. Where does this one take place in? Okay, Australia. So the Forza Horizon 3 takes place in Australia. So kind of continuing on with that open world design. I still never played this one. It wasn't until Forza Horizon 4 that I started playing it. But then that's where I really ended up loving the series. But yeah, so cool racing series. I'll have more to say on this series as we start getting to Forza Horizon 4. But basically another racing game. Let's see. And then Gears of War 4. So Gears of War 4, I mean, you've heard me talk about the Gears of War games before in the past, right? Absolutely love them. And so now we're getting the next generation one, right? Gears of War 4 here. And so my expectations were a little high for this game. And I mean, it was why I got to play the Xbox One in the first place. Bit of a disappointment. Right. And that's one thing about this generation here that started becoming a repeating pattern, is that a lot of the game series that I really used to like, that came out in this generation, it's good, but, it's a bit lackluster, not as great as the previous one. Gears of War, for example, Halo 5, for example, Batman Arkham Knight, for example. Let's see, I know there's some other ones. Oh my God, I can't think of them right off the top of my head. Like the Call of Duty games, for example, too, right? I mean, they're not bad. They just felt like lackluster compared to the previous generation games in those series. So Gears of War 4 takes place many years after the original trilogy. So now you're playing Marcus Phoenix's son and his group of friends. Marcus Phoenix does make an appearance in this one, though. And I mean, the gameplay is cool. It has some pretty cool set pieces and action and all. That's all fine. It's just something about the story, the setup to it and all, that it just doesn't feel as inspired as the previous Gears of War games. So not bad by no means, right? But this is also where the Coalition was doing this series now, where they did the Gears of War Judgment that I believe I talked about a few years ago, and so then they did this one here. And so they just seemed that they lacked a bit of the magic that Epic Games had when they were doing the series originally back on the 360. So again, not a bad game, just a bit lackluster. I mean, if anything, the graphics are amazing on it, right? But it's, I don't know. It's just the characters and all. It just overall, it just wasn't as memorable as the other, the first three on the series here. But let's jump over to the PlayStation 4 and the exclusives that this one had. So we had No Man's Sky that was originally exclusive on the PlayStation 4. And so this game has a bit of a history to it. Let's read a bit about it because this is kind of interesting as far as what happened to this game overall. So No Man's Sky is an action-adventure survival game developed by and published by Hello Games. It was released worldwide for the PlayStation 4 and Windows in August 2016, for Xbox One in July 2018, and then blah 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 for the other consoles later on. But just kind of focusing on this here. So the game is built around 4 pillars, right? Exploration, survival, combat, and trading. Players can engage with the entirety of a procedurally generated deterministic open world universe, which includes over 18 quintillion planets. Fuck. I don't have that much. Quintillion, is that even a real number? But let's see. Through the games, it's like, I want $1 billion for fucking Austin Powers. Anyways, through the game's procedural generation systems, planets have their own ecosystems with unique forms of flora and fauna. And various alien species. Okay, so basically, yeah. So you go through all these planets, and you're, like it says there, right? It's a exploration, survival, combat, and trading game. So it's not like an action game. It's just kind of like almost like a cozy game, and all. It's kind of the understanding that I get on it. But what I want to get to is more the overall reception of this game and all, because there was a lot of controversy with this game because it was one of those games that was overpromised, and when it finally came out, it was very underwhelming. So Sean Murray, the founder of Hello Games, wanted to create a game that captured the sense of exploration and optimism of science fiction literature and art of the 1970s and 80s, which is right, because when I look at the game, the art style definitely is reminiscent of that. But the game was developed over 3 years by a small team at Hello Games with promotional and publishing help from Sony Interactive Entertainment. The gaming media saw this as an ambitious project for a small team, and Murray and Hello Games drew significant attention leading to its release. No Man's Sky received mixed reviews at its 2016 launch, with some critics praising the technical achievements of the procedurally generated universe, while others considered the gameplay lackluster and repetitive. However, the critical response was marred by the lack of several features that had been reported to be in the game, particularly multiplayer capabilities. The game was further criticized due to Hello Games' lack of communication in the months following the launch, creating backlash from some of its players. Murray later stated that Hello Games had failed to control the hype around the game and the larger than expected player count at launch, and since then have taken an approach of remaining quiet about updates to the game until they are nearly ready to release. The promotion and marketing for No Man's Sky became a subject of debate and has been cited as an example of what to avoid in video game marketing. Since in its game's initial release, Hello Games has continued to improve and expand No Man's Sky to achieve the vision of the experience they wanted to build. The game has received the plethora of major content updates and have added several previously missing features, such as multiplayer components, while adding features like surface vehicles, base building, space fleet management, and cross-platform play, and virtual reality support. Well, that'd be kind of cool, actually. But this has substantially improved No Man's Sky's overall reception, with multiple websites citing it as one of the greatest redemption stories in the video game industry. So, yeah, I mean, it's and this is where we started seeing a pattern of there's another particular cyberpunk game later on we're going to talk about that will even further implemented this, right? Where basically it's one of the things where nowadays you're almost basically advised to not pre-order a game, because so many games nowadays are coming out broken and then they patch it later. Most of the times it's not that bad, right? It's like there's still a finally playable version, right? There's just some little hiccups here and there that eventually get patched, right? Annoying, but you can still deal with it. No Man's Sky, though, was, like they said there, right? It was very overhyped and all, but ultimately didn't live up to the expectations of what they promised. And so then you paid for a game and all that, right? That was completely buggy and broken and missing a lot of features at first. And it wasn't until later that it got patched. And so I think that this is sort of like a wake-up call for the industry to say, like, wait a minute, we need to hold developers and publishers more accountable for what they're promising in their games, because we're plunking down our cash for this. And if you're lying to your audience and then it's going to, with the promise that it's going to be added later, that's not very convincing. That's not a very good marketing strategy. Unfortunately, though, as years have gone on, this kind of practice has become just more and more normalized. Again, we'll talk about another certain game, Cyberpunk, right? That was kind of the same. Now, kudos to the company and all that they've been able to redeem this game, and I've actually been interested in checking it out more, but at the same time, though, right? I mean, I can't think of another business that could get away with something like this. And we've normalized it so much in video games that I think, I don't know for sure, but it seems like a lot of publishers are just sort of like, whatever, we'll just patch it later. Everyone's expecting that nowadays. But we only have ourselves to blame, though, for that, where, we should start holding them more accountable. I mean, if your game isn't ready, then don't ship it yet, right? I get it. They have to meet deadlines and whatnot. So I know that's not realistic in a business world, but it's just very shady marketing. And again, I can't think of another industry that does this and gets away with it so much the way the video game industry does. But again, kudos to them that they did make right on everything, with providing free updates and whatnot. And from what I understand, like if you were to play it now, it is a very it is a very good game, right, for what it is. And so just kind of annoying, right, that it took all this to get there. Because I remember the dude that they were talking about here, the founder of it, Sean Murray, I mean, he was like on a lot of like shows, like a lot of late night talk show hosts or late night shows and whatnot. So they were definitely hyping up the game, but when it came out, they were like, "What the hell? You lied!" Right? And so that's why I wanted to talk about this, because it became sort of a trend going forward, right, with video games, and even going on to this day, right, that we just really need to do better on this. It's just not right to. I hate like fake marketing. I just something that it annoys me, right? But it's just the reality of businesses nowadays. Anyway, yeah, wanted to touch base a bit on that there. But we got Street Fighter V, and speaking of kind of a broken launch, this was another one too, now that I recall. Street Fighter V. So I remember there didn't seem to be a whole lot of hype behind this one at the time. And so I remember thinking, I was like, I haven't really heard much about this, because this one was going to come out on the PlayStation 4. So it wasn't coming out like on the Xbox, for example, at least not at this time originally. But let's see. Okay, so I'm going to read up a bit on Street Fighter V. I just remember it was another game that was kind of the same, where it just had a very... it wasn't like the game when it came out, it wasn't complete, basically. And they released the game like that, right? And it wasn't until later that they added all their patches and whatnot. But that's what I'm saying, right? It's just kind of annoying. So Street Fighter V is a 2016 fighting game developed by Capcom and DIMPS and published by Capcom for the PlayStation 4 and Windows. The major follow-up to Street Fighter 4 as part of Capcom's Street Fighter series, it was developed using the Unreal Engine 4 engine that was a console exclusive on Sony's platform. Similar to previous games in the series, Street Fighter V features a side-scrolling fighting gameplay system and introduced the V-Gauge mechanic. The game featured 16 characters at launch, with 4 of them being new to the series. A main story mode and 30 additional characters were added through updates and downloadable content. Upon release, the game received mixed reviews, and with critics praising the gameplay's graphics and gameplay, but criticizing its lack of content and characters as well as its technical issues. At launch, the game initially sold lower than Capcom's expectations. However, as of March 2023, Street Fighter V has sold 7.2 million units, making it the best Street Fighter game on home consoles. Well, the best-selling Street Fighter game on home consoles, surpassing the original version of Street Fighter II. An updated version developed by Taito, Street Fighter V Arcade Edition, was released in 2018 and was perceived more positively, with various improvements such as additional gameplay content and addition of arcade mode. A second update, 2020 update, titled Street Fighter V Champion Edition, includes all the fighters, stages, and most of the costumes released through its first 4 seasons. Street Fighter V was followed up by a sequel, Street Fighter VI, in 2023. So again, right, the game came out, it was very lackluster, it had a very basic... No, actually, I think that you can only play online at first, which I get, that's how a lot of, nowadays, right, I don't know how a lot of people want to play these games, but, I mean, it's just kind of like what happened to the days of just getting a game, you have your single player mode, even if it's just an arcade mode, because I don't think it even have that, if I remember. your multiplayer mode, right? Like your co-op mode, or even I guess online nowadays. What like whatever happened to that? Now you don't even have like a basic single player mode, and again, some of the stuff with with video games, right, and all nowadays is just kind of annoying. And yeah, so again, No Man's Sky and Street Fighter V were heavily panned for that. Eventually, yes, they did become good games, but it just shouldn't be the normal practice, though. Right. And there has been pushback on this, like everything I've talked about before with the stop killing games movement. Right. So there has been pushback on it, but, we can still do better, though. Because, again, what I'm talking about here is still going on to this day. But then we had The Last Guardian. And this is a game I haven't played much of, but it's from the creators of Eco and Shadow of the Colossus, which are amazing games. But this one is kind of in that graphical style, and it looked really nice. Same sort of like very ethereal sort of style. They have a cool style to it. It's like fantasy based, but I don't know. It's really cool. Very, subtle storytelling. A lot of it is storytelling by show me, don't tell me kind of style, which is cool. But this one, though, it kind of combines what Eco and Shadow of the Colossus were doing. And by that, I mean is that you have a partner in the game, kind of like Eco, where, you're guiding that girl around the castle. But the partner, though, happens to be this pretty big kind of dog/chicken looking thing, whatever the hell it is, kind of thing, almost, but also reminds you of like the Falcor, the name of the dragon from the Neverending Story, something like that. And so it's pretty big and all that, so you can climb in it, and also kind of like you would in one of the bosses in Shadow of the Colossus. So it kind of combines both worlds there, and it's puzzle. You solve some puzzles and all, right, to get through some areas with this creature right by your side. I've never played this game all the way through. I just played like maybe about an hour into it one time, and I think I got stuck on this one area, and I never went back to it. But it had my interest to go back and play it, so definitely one that I haven't played not just because I haven't wanted to. It's just because I just I just haven't had the time to go back to it. But I do want to check this game out, and I think now especially because it runs a lot better. Because this is a game that was delayed for a while, and then it was I think this is another game that was a bit buggy at launch, but since then I think it's been patched up pretty well and all, from my understanding. But yeah, definitely want to go back and play this game. It looks really interesting. And then we had Ratchet and Clank, I guess you could say like the 2016 edition. So Ratchet and Clank, it came out from Insomniac Games. It's basically like a remake of the first Ratchet and Clank game that came out on the PlayStation 2 way back in 2002. So more or less kind of the same framework, right, for this game. Just definitely adds a lot of new elements. Obviously, the graphics are a lot better and all. And it's pretty cool overall. My only complaint with this one, though, is that I think I've mentioned it somewhere, I don't know where, but that I just prefer the more edgy kind of humor from the previous Ratchet and Clank games over like the newer ones, and especially the first one, right? Because it was the first game, different time, and it's not like the first one was really crude, right? In its humor, it was just a bit more edgy, I guess, right? Which I could appreciate more. But this one, it's a bit sanitized, but it's still fun. Ratchet and Clank, they're still a pair, and now you get experience the first adventure with James Arnold Taylor doing the voice, which I know I've talked about it sometime before, but I kind of prefer the first actor. I think it was Mike Kelly, that voice for Ratchet and Clank. But, James Arnold Taylor, he's definitely coming to his own as this character. He's been voicing him for years now, and so it's kind of cool to hear him now play this first adventure here. But it has a lot of new elements. Dr. Nefarious is back here as a villain, and it looks great. It definitely looks almost like a Pixar animation, and because there was a cartoon or animated movie, I should say, that came out around the same time, and so I think that's why part of the reason why they released this game is so that it can kind of coincide with the animated movie. Which that animated movie I never saw, but my understanding is not that great. But yeah, it's a good game. It's a interesting new take on the first version. I wouldn't say that this one replaces the original one. It's just a cool new way to play it. And at the time, it looked pretty nice. It was running at with HDR support, I believe, like if you had the PlayStation 4 Pro, I think, anyways. But it was only running at 30 frames per second. So I remember, I thought that was a bit of a letdown, considering that the previous one, right, ran around 60 frames per second. So that was a bit of a letdown. Eventually, you could play it at 60 frames per second on the PlayStation 5. But again, just kind of a bummer you couldn't play it at that time when it came out. But it was still a pretty good time, though. I enjoyed my time with this one. Because I did end up beating it at one point. But finally, to end off here is for Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. And so I would say that, yeah, this is probably my favorite game of this year. I spent a lot of time around this, around this time, right, with Final Fantasy 15, even though all the shit that I talked about that game, it's a Final Fantasy game, so I still got absorbed into it quite a bit. But Final Fantasy 15, Titanfall 2, and Uncharted 4 were, and to an extent, Gears of War 4 were like my games this year, right, that I spent a lot of time with. But Uncharted 4: Thieves' End is definitely great. Not my favorite Uncharted game. That still goes to Uncharted 2 Among Thieves, but it might be my second favorite. But it's a bit more gritty. It's, this one was written, I think, by Neil Druckmann, I think, because I know Amy Hennig didn't have much of a hand in this one anymore. I kind of liked her style, though, for like these kind of games more, because her style felt a little bit more like you're in an adventure, where this one, it's kind of cool that it was being a little bit more gritty and all to an extent, but I don't know, I just kind of like more her style, though. But still a cool story, though. And this one here, you're introduced to Nate's brother, right? Which that part of the story there, it's pretty well done, the way it's implemented in the story. And the Troy Baker voices the actor. So it's kind of cool to see Troy Baker, who voices Sam, the brother of Nathan in this one. And then Nolan North, right, as they're, talking back and forth to each other. I thought that was pretty cool, because they've been, some of the more prominent actors in this generation. But I don't know. But at the same time, I kind of felt like, oh, he had a brother the whole time. Like, I felt it kind of came out of nowhere too. But overall, though, the story's pretty cool. It has the same great Uncharted gameplay, some really cool set pieces. The graphics are outstanding in this. This game, like I said before, right, graphics really started peaking around this time. It ran at 30 frames per second, which was a bit of a bummer. But like when you played this game on the PlayStation 5, the version that came out on that system, we had 60 frames per second, but otherwise the same graphics, just, bump up in resolution too. It looks incredible still amongst one of the best looking games of all time. And this game came out, 10 years ago, right? So that's what I'm saying. Graphics kind of started peaking around this time as far as like character models, textures, and lighting and things like that. You can make slight improvements on it, and you can increase the frame rate and the resolution, which is cool. But the overall look of the game, though, and all right, if you just look at a screenshot, basically, not much of a difference, right? But yeah, cool game though. I mean, it's a fairly long game too for an Uncharted game, and I will say though that the ending to this game, as far as on how it caps off the whole series, it's really great and very satisfying, right? So if you've been playing the Uncharted games and you haven't quite played this one though, for some reason, you owe it to yourself to definitely play this one, because it's a pretty good game overall. But the ending really just kind of caps off the whole series, right, in a really nice way, where it's like, oh, okay, that was cool. I'm happy with how it ended. This is an amazing series. If we never get another Uncharted game, even though I think I talked about it recently, right, that there might be one in the works, but I'd be happy with it because it ends in a really nice, satisfying way, basically. And I thought it was cool, right? And so, just something when you've been playing a series for so long, and then finally you get to see like your character, like, okay, they have their ending. Let's just leave it at that, right? So it's worth playing definitely for that. But it's also a really fun adventure. And another complaint that I had about it is that it's no, never mind. Actually, I was maybe I'm thinking of something else, but no, never mind. But yeah, cool game overall, though, and I would say, yeah, probably my favorite game of this year. Yeah, but that's what I got for 2016. So hopefully that brought back some memories of some of the stuff you might have been playing during this stretch here, which was just 10 years ago. So we're getting closer to modern times, and or at the very least, if it gave you some games to add to your ever-growing backlog. Next episode, we'll be back with the year 2017 and what that brought to video games. There was a certain switcheroo that Nintendo was doing with Nintendo consoles. No pun intended. And that also came with what's considered one of the best games of all time. And hint, hint, it's a Zelda game. Along with the Plumber coming back with a really incredible adventure too. But another thing that this year is really noted for too is for a certain game that just took over the gaming industry, right? A certain little Fortnite game. But also too is that this is where people really feel that Japanese gaming started making a comeback. So we talked about it some years ago or some episodes back, right? Where Japanese gaming started taking a bit of a backseat. Well, this is the year that many people consider that it started making a comeback. And there'll be a lot of games that we'll be discussing that are examples of that there. So 2017 is also known to be one of the greatest years in video games. Not for me personally, but I guess as I'm doing my research on it, maybe I'll start trying to understand a bit more why it is considered to be one of the best years in video game history. So that'll be a lot of fun to talk about. But we'll see you then. Hopefully I'll have that next episode up by next Sunday. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have an amazing week, and we'll see you then. Have a good one.